Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is OctoMan, and this is the live stream for, let's say, Unity tutorial. Well, more like a prototyping, tutorial, I would say, about how to create a Paperboy 3D-ish game in Unity. Before I going to start over here, I want to let you know that you can go and download your free PDF about 3 strategies to finish your game. And this may help you in the future to actually create your games faster, probably, if you have the good idea or a good idea about a strategy to to finish your game. So for people who don't know what Paperboy was in the past, Paperboy was, I believe, released on Atari and some of the other rather old consoles, where you're gonna have like let's say a driver who's going to actually currently push forward and is trying to hit or bring the actual paper or a paper inside some kind of buildings or something like that. So he needs to throw them rather precisely into some model. I'm gonna talk about this meanwhile we are creating those. So I prepared some of the models already. Well, they are rather easy, nothing fancy about it. So I have created some kind of a biker over here. You can see nothing fancy on that guy. So this is once again just for prototyping and more than enough to do this. He's not animated or do anything. And of course I created like 3 different buildings or houses, and this is actually the aim to hit basically. So this is the goal to hit with the paper. And if you're hitting like the doormat or something like that, you are absolutely able to get points there as well. And I have different ones over here. So here there could be a dog inside which can come out and change chase the actual driver over there. And we can also put cars, something coming out or coming like rolling in front of the biker. So what we need to achieve or want to achieve is, or what I want to achieve is something like, oh hi E-Rolls, thanks a lot for tuning in over here. Glad to see you quite often. What I want to achieve is like we create one of these 4 buildings like on runtime, and we are basically moving our biker like always over the z-axis by, let's say, a specific amount of angle. So basically we can drive this guy like permanently forward with a constant speed. We can change the speed probably by using the forward button, and then we are basically driving this guy a bit left and a bit right, maybe something like 15 to, let's say, 30 degrees or something. So we are always constantly staying kind of on the road. What we want to achieve is, of course, we want to get at the most important or the most possible points over here. And what we want to do is we want to avoid any kind of obstacles. So there can be bushes, there can be cans of trash, whatever. There can be hundreds of things, moving things, and so on. There can be people on the road. Something we want to make sure that we don't get or run into it. So. And what we also want to have is probably in the end is something like pickups. So whenever we have thrown a good amount of papers already, then we want to make sure that we can pick up multiple or just stock up, whatever, these papers. So we end up with another 10 papers in total or something like that, or maybe 5. So we need to hit. Also, there are some special rules which are completely up to the people which have designed that in the past, where whenever there is a hit inside the glasses or inside a window and it is a subscriber, he's going to be unsubscribing the actual route of the paper guy, and also vice versa. If there's a unsubscribed guy, then we are hitting the actual glasses, then of course our windows, then they're going to subscribe to the newspaper. So as you can see, there's like a good ongoing thing. We can do this like permanently or keep this ongoing permanently. So for the modeling part, it's important that the biker itself has its pivot point like rather on the bottom over here. Same for the houses. You want to make sure that it's like always on each house is going to be like about the same yeah, let's say same pivot point. If you don't have that, then you want to make sure that you create a extra game object which is holding this information. So how do we actually start with? Well, what do we need is, well, in case of prototyping, I already have a video or stream about it where I specifically touch how you actually do prototyping. In this case, I know what I need to do. So first off, I want to create the buildings automatically. It's like maybe constantly bringing them up or whatever. So meaning I need to spawn maybe 4 at the very beginning, then keep on spawning. Meanwhile, the driver or the biker is going to drive always on the road. So let's go into the design phase and take a look into this, what this actually means. So first off, we're gonna have to set our biker. So this biker, once again, I don't have any things about him, no colors or anything. We can tint him. I could basically go and animate this guy like doing whatever, you know, like cycling with the legs if needed. I could also put some throw animation, like for example, just taking the arm, you know, and then just rotate it, and I could do something like this. Basically, it doesn't really matter since, well, I just put some kind of a spawn point over here and just throw this to the direction where I want this driver to move along. Okay, so let's assume he's going to be constantly going or moving forward in the Z direction. What do we need is some kind of a game object which is spawning like constantly buildings onto the left or onto the right side. We can also do both, and so we are probably able to switch camera here and there, but I would go for one side only at the first place. When you later on go and create multiple levels, you want to do maybe some variation, something like left 10 and right 10 or something like that, or just you have to go like in between those. That should be able or should be possible as well. What we also want to make sure is that this driver is actually able to only rotate in a specific or to a specific maximum angle onto the left or to the right side. So we increase and decrease the angle by whatever degrees we want into the positive 45 and negative, or let's say 30 is like 30 degrees into the negative axis, or negative y and positive y, something like that. So we want to keep him inside this angle. I believe we go and start with the driver alone over there. So I first off would go and create a C# script. Of course, make sure you always work clean and stuff. I'm gonna do something like just create a player. So I start with the movement, since the movement in this case is going to be one of the most important stuff here, I would say. And the spawning about the buildings is not so hard to do. I believe the player at the moment is going to be the most, important stuff. I'm gonna open this in my mono develop. You're gonna probably have to do this like in, Visual Studio, whatever IDE you are using. And once it has been loaded, and hopefully it does it today, then I'm gonna wait for my firewall pretty quick. And once it is like messaging me that my mono behavior or my mono developer wants to go outside, I don't know what we need to do. So this is not a prepared tutorial. This is like a free tutorial over here. So be prepared for any issues or stuff like that. So once again, what do we want to do is in our update loop, we want to push or actually drive our driver like always constantly forward onto the z-axis, no matter what the direction is. So that's what I would do first over here. We're gonna have like 2 speed variables first, so maybe a float speed, and maybe it's something like a float maximum speed, so we can increase the maximum speed by whatever whenever we push the forward button or something like that. So we're gonna have like the maximum speed over here. Then I'm gonna go into the update loop, and I would just push once again forward, or like the driver forward by whatever the speed amount is. If we want to do this like a public one, we can also implement something like, I don't know, a 10 or something over here for the speed, which we want to translate the driver forward. So what we can do is we can basically take something like transform.position, and then we add to the current transform.position by, for example, like what we can do is equal to, or maybe we're gonna do plus equal to, and then we just say something like transform.forward, which is going to be the forward axis, like the z-axis of our driver, and then we multiply that to probably something like, well, not space, but speed, and times time dot delta time. So we're gonna have some kind of a constant speed over here, and a rather straight one also between multiple devices. So let's test it out and see if that works or not. So what we need to do is we need to put our biker over here and put the player script directly onto the biker. When I now press play, the biker hopefully moves forward. I'm gonna go out of maximize on play and see what's going on. As you can see, this biker is somehow stuck onto the position over here, so we need to make sure that we fix that that problem. Actually, as you can see, it wiggles just around. It doesn't really, it can't really do anything. So instead of setting it to be equal to the forward axis times time dot delta time, we want to make sure that we add to the current position over here. So we can say plus equal, and probably that works. So we add to the actual forward axis, which always represents a 1 into the z. We multiply the z value by speed and by time dot delta time. Let's test it out. So as you can see, our driver is now rather fast already at driving forward. So probably 10 is a bit too huge. Maybe we're gonna take something like 2. So once again, test it out. And as you can see, it moves rather slow right now. If I rotate this guy right now, you can see, I just hold down the mouse and rotate around. You can see that this guy is basically always driving forward based on its own forward axis. So whenever you have whatever the kind of a movement is, this driver always moves into this direction. Now what we want to do is we want to cap the actual input. So we want to give some type of an input. For example, if we are doing something like like a button press forward, we want to increase the speed to its maximum speed. Let's assume our maximum speed, when we currently have something like a speed of 2, maybe that needs to be a bit slower. It depends on the, later on the game, if it feels good or not. We probably want to set our maximum speed to maybe 4 or maybe 3. So now we need to just request the actual input, meaning if we're gonna do something like a input, like pressing the forward key, like the arrow key forward or something, then we want to go to maximum speed. Otherwise we're gonna reset, like whenever we release the forward key, we want to reset back to the normal speed over here. Since we're gonna have this speed over here like being like a minimum speed, we want to implement this probably as well. So since we know that, I'm gonna make a min speed over there as well, something like this. You can type this out whatever you please and like. I'm gonna put this on 2 as well, so equal to f. And what I want to make sure is that the speed is basically driven by minimum speed and maximum speed. So we can now reset always by using the minimum speed and the maximum speed whenever we push the button. So we say if we're gonna do some input dot get key. So meanwhile we are holding a specific key. In this case we're gonna take something like key code dot, I believe it's up arrow. There we go. On our keyboard we can also do a button press or something like that. Basically doesn't matter. Like when we hold down a button onto our device, if we are using mobile device, then we can also do, whenever we hold down this particular button, then we can do basically change the speed to be whatever the speed is. So in this case we can set speed to be equal to the maximum speed over here. So we just override it with maximum speed, and what we want to do is if we release that key, then we want to go back to the normal speed. So we can basically copy this complete part over there and paste it over here. And if we say get key, what is it called? Get key up, I would say. There we go, get key up. So when we release that key, the up arrow in this case, we want to actually set the speed to be back to the minimum speed over here. Don't forget to save. So once again, we update the speed over here. We're gonna do the transform position over there by that, like constantly, like 60 times a second, that gets updated. And we want to make sure that this keeps on going. Let's test it out. So I'm gonna drive like with a 2, and when I now push my forward key, you're gonna see I'm a bit faster, and when I release, I'm once again back to normal. Pretty good. So the main one is going to be done. Now we want to make sure that we decrement or increment the angle based on a specific rotation part. So whenever we do something like input.left key and right key, like left arrow and right arrow, then we want to do reduce the angle by whatever speed, like a rotation speed. So for that, we're going to do something like a float rotation speed. We need to actually calculate this anyhow, or define this. We start with 2. I don't know how fast this is going to be. We'll see. So, and what we want to do is over here is probably something like if we're putting a left key or a left the left arrow key basically. Let me just copy this one so we are a bit faster through that. Like we're gonna say something like left arrow. When we put the left arrow, we want to negate the actual axis. So we want to decrement the current angle, like the current rotation of the y angle. So in this case, we want to basically do a rotation. And we want to reduce from the actual, how shall I say, from the local Euler angle. So what we can do is something like transform.rotation. And now we can basically, since that is a quaternion, it might not be the best choice to do it with the rotation itself. But what we're going to do is we can say something is equal to, and now we could create a new quaternion, or just say quaternion.Euler. Or we can also use Euler angle probably. I would say we go with Euler, since we can put in like any vector. Oh yeah, you're right, but E-roll, here we go and hit the key up, or we release the key. Let me release key here, and in here we just hold it down. Hold down key. So that's what we need to do over there, of course. Okay, so we're gonna go and wanna now to see how we can rotate that thing. Like now with the left key or the right key, we can literally put in any angle over there, or any Euler angle, like a new vector. So it's just a 0, 0, 0 at the beginning. And what we want to do is we want to negate the actual y rotation over here minus, let's say, a specific angle or whatever. No worries about that. That's why I'm here. I'm gonna try to explain as good as I can. So we can now try to decrease that by, let's say, a rotation speed times time to delta time. For example, we're gonna take our rotation speed. We want to negate this. We will do that in a second. So we take the rotation speed times time dot delta time on the y-axis, since we are rotating like over the y-axis, up and down axis basically. So what we can do is we can take maybe the transform of rotation and negate, let's say, minus equal this Euler quaternion, but it cannot be used like that. So maybe minus equal a new quaternion is not possible to do this. Okay, so we need to now think about how can we do this better than because negating it is not like is like a minus equal. We probably go and negate the rotation speed over there. I don't think that is going to work basically because it's not constantly increasing, I guess. Let's try that out. Once again, this is not prepared or anything. I just test things out. So when I now hit the left key, something rotates there, but rather slow. So instead of using key up over here, I want to say get key of the left arrow. So I hold it down and want to see if there's something changing. Probably I need to increase the rotation speed over there, so we are rotating a bit faster. Once again, over here, it is like how fluid things are going. So currently I'm super slowly rotating in the negative y direction. So let me increase that number to something like 200, just to see if that really works or not. Don't forget to save in between, so you can quicker test stuff over there. Okay, so what it does is it does the rotation, but it's, as you can see, it's like, well, not doing much over there, since it's trying to hold it at this position, it seems. So what we now need to do is we need to find a way to decrease the actual local Euler angle basically from or with the particular input of that rotation. So there are hundreds of possibilities, I believe, and if you have any trouble, I recommend you using the Google API, not the Google API, but the Unity API, where a lot of things about rotations and stuff like that are going to be explained over there. I'm gonna take a look into this some or most of the times here as well. So whenever I'm anyhow struggling and don't know how to rotate over time or by button press, I'm gonna Google basically. So you can do this like every time over here as well. So that's what I can do over here, rotate by button press, and gonna see if I get anything over here, like rotating an object by key press. So we want to hold this one down, and there are like hundreds of possibilities. In this case, we probably just want to take the transform.rotate, which is also working over here. So let's take a look into this. What I'm gonna do is I comment this part out, since there are once again a lot of possibilities. So transform.rotate, and now we can basically rotate around an axis by an angle or whatever, or we can just do rotate. So rotate basically takes the vector Euler angle once again relative to the space wherever it is going to be over there, and there are like 6 possibilities to split the things up. So we can basically take an angle, or we can basically take a speed over there, I guess. Something like that. So we put an axis where we want to rotate around, and then we want to put in the angle. So in that case, the axis is going to be the vector3.up, since that is going to represent the y value over there. And now we want to have something like an angle. So basically, it's the rotation speed times time the delta time. I want to negate this because we want to do this in the negative direction over here. Okay, now I'm gonna go and save and test again. Once again, there are hundreds of possibilities for different things to do over there. So what you can see is I can now rotate my biker over here around itself. Whenever I hold this key down, it's rather fast, I guess. Maybe I'm gonna reduce that to something like 150. I don't know, something like that. Maybe you can also put some kind of a damper inside or whatsoever. What I also want to do is, of course, I want to have the same stuff for the right arrow, since I want to put this guy also to the right. I believe right arrow with a big R is going to be correct. And we want to get rid of this negative sign over here, since we don't really need this. So I hit Control S for a quick save over there. On a Mac it should be Command S, I believe. Just check it out. And now we should be able to rotate this guy like left or right. Pretty good. And we should also be able to speed up or release once again. So we can go a bit faster. We can basically now drive anywhere we want. We don't have any physics or collisions or stuff like that. We just have the driver now. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that he's not able to steer over a specific angle. So basically we want to keep this rotation onto something, like onto the local rotation over there. So we want to make sure that the negative y angle is not smaller than a specific number, like for example not smaller than negative 30. So we could do something like, probably we'll put another if statement over here. So if the transform dot thanks a lot for your comment, Mr. Ero. So what we can check is now if the local Euler angles or the Euler angles. So that's what we need to take care here as well. So meaning when the local Euler angles, and now we can go and check for just the y value over here. So if this one is actually bigger than minus 30, then we want to make sure that whenever we put the left key, that we are able to do the actual transform.rotate over here. I'm gonna get rid of this transform.rotation part, since it's probably distracting. And I would just go and test this one out. If we are able to rotate now to the left side, so once again, that's the negative the negative value over here. So if the angle is bigger than minus 30 on the y-axis, then we want to do the rotation. Control S, quick save, and just check it out once the compiler is done running over here, and see if that works. Well, nope, it doesn't. So what we now need to do is we need to check now if the local Euler angles are the correct ones, but as you can see, they are not. So probably we are not taking the local Euler angles, but the normal Euler angles, like this one, and test again. As you can see, I can hold down the key, but still I am able to rotate around this axis. It doesn't really matter to, he's not really checking about that one over there. So there are multiple reasons for doing so, or for that actually. And once again, there are I believe hundreds of possibilities once again to check if an angle is higher or lower than whatever. We can store things also inside a quaternion, and probably we are able to clamp the actual angle, like the local Euler angle, by this particular angle over here. So we can clamp it between two values, like a negative 30 and a positive 30 on this complete control over there. So let me try that. So meanwhile we are doing this input, we are probably not able to check this out. So maybe we wanna do a extra check over here, or maybe we just set it to be something. So transform dot Euler angles, or maybe I'm not quite sure if the local Euler angles or the Euler angles are going to be correct. And we should be able to clamp them anyhow. Something like mass f dot clamp. And probably it's not just, or not the complete Euler angles, but maybe the y value. But as you can see, we have to split this up first. And so we read this, or we need to read this at the very beginning. What do we want to clamp is basically the local Euler angles over here, like this. So we're going to put them here as a value. And then we're going to test it something like minus 30. And as you can see, it just takes float values. We cannot, or even integers. So we cannot directly take this because we only want to clamp this value. So instead of doing all of that, we need to, I believe, catch the local Euler angles first before we are able to actually manipulate them. So in that case, we would basically read them, bring them into some kind of a placeholder, like a vector. Then we change the vector, and then we perform the rotation, or we just increase the actual vector value, and then we're gonna clamp this particular value once we are done with the rotation. Probably that works better, because as you can see, this way the actual input doesn't really care or whatever. So maybe we can, that's what I would test here probably as well. First is maybe we can do something like that we're only able to do an input whenever, like this code is going to be happening. So sometimes it helps to bring the one over there and then the other. So let's see. Maybe I have a wrong mark anywhere, but as you can see, I can do the rotation to the left or to the right, and he don't really, or actually my driver doesn't really care about that. So what I would do is I would try now to figure out or store the current actual Euler angles somewhere, and then we basically manipulate the stored vector and then bring this back, and we can now, or at this point, just zero out things. So for example, we could at start or somewhere, we can just store this information into some kind of a vector 3, something like angle or angles, and I would try to say void start, and we want to catch the current angle. So whenever we are at a specific point, or we want to set now the angles to be equal to whatever our transform dot, I believe it's the Euler angles over there. So we're gonna take them. Maybe once again we may need to switch back to this. So what I would now do is I would now manipulate the ankles.y, and then I would put the, like, this key input. I would do this a bit different, so meaning that I would manipulate ankles first, keep it between a value, so we cannot make it higher than that, and then we just change the actual transform rotation to be equal to the ankles as seen as a quaternion, like the quaternion.Euler. Maybe that makes sense, maybe that works. So as I already started to work on here, is that we just basically put in the ankle over here into this quaternion Euler at the very end, so whenever that is basically done. So we store the information over here, and whenever we now do our left key input, we want to manipulate the ankle. So we increase it by the rotation speed times time.delta time on the y-axis, or decrease. So that's what I would try out first. So ankles.y minus equal. Since now we can directly play around with this vector, nobody cares about it, we can now say we want to do something like we want to negate this one by rotation speed times time.delta time whenever we press that particular button. I get rid of this one over here since it doesn't really make sense, or it doesn't work at all, and I'm gonna put this together like that. I'm gonna make a semicolon in the end, so always make sure everything works. And what I want to do is, before I understand if that really works, I want to make sure that ankles.y gets set correctly. So I want to debug that. Meanwhile, I hold down the left key when I move around. So what I can do is to debug is I can do something like debug.log, or I can just print the actual ankles.y value. So ankles.y. So we see if that really works or not. So if we get the correct values back into ankles. So let's test it out, because it could be that the ankles value is completely different. So, and now we're gonna take a look over here. So as you can see, this is now another value than this rotation value over there. So I want to make sure that I just slightly move a bit to the left so we can read the correct angle. As you can see, now we are at -26, and that's probably enough to make use of the actual ankles over there. So meaning what I would do is I would do something like transform.rotation is equal to quaternion.Euler, and in open close parentheses we're gonna put in the ankles over here. So I'm gonna get rid of this, and I just toggle the line command. I get rid of that just for the moment, and so I can see if I actually get now the ankles work over here completely correct, and if the quaternion rotation works on the same mechanic now. So when I now head left, pretty good. I can still move around just by using the manipulated ankles vector. So as you can see, we don't need to necessarily rotate around a up vector. We just actually change the ankles y over here, store this into our ankles vector from our local Euler ankles, or just the Euler ankles, and then we are able to perform the rotation just over here. Now we should be able to clamp the ankles.y axis over here whenever we hold down this key. Let's try this out. So in this case, we can do something like, I believe so, I mean we should, ankles.y is equal to, and now we still do something like massf and dot clamp, of course. So we try to clamp it over here directly. So what do we want to clamp? It needs to be in here at first, so ankles.y. Then we're gonna say the min and the maximum value. So in this case, we do something like -30, and I don't know, usually it should be 30, since that is going to be the maximum value. And basically we need to do this complete ankles checkup. Well, where can we do this? Maybe we do this directly over here. I don't know. So we basically have to do this 2 times. So since whenever we do the left rotation, we go negative, we take the negative value over there. And of course over here we have the positive, like later on for the positive. So basically even here could be a 0, since it doesn't really matter for us for the left movement. Okay, so I'm gonna let the compiler run pretty quick and see if that works. So we move forward, I hit left, And now I try to tap my left key and I cannot move now further than this particular minus 30 degree angle. Pretty good. So I cannot bypass this 30, and probably I reduce the speed to even 100, should be more than enough since the angle is rather small. If that is not high enough or not big enough, whatever, or not small enough, we can always go in here and change that. Okay, nice. Now I can get rid of all that content and I just completely change the workflow from just rotating it once again over an up axis by rotation speed to be directly performed inside a vector and then just bypass this one to send the information into the angles over here. What we now want to do is we want to do the same for the right arrow. So basically I just copy this complete part. I make sure that it's above this line. Otherwise, this will not be updated correctly. And over here, we want to make sure that we increment now the rotation speed because we want to go in the positive or to the right direction. And of course, we're going to change the input to be the right arrow type. No idea if that works now and if it works completely correct. So I store and save the script over here. And we go further and take a look into this. So I can go right. I cannot bypass the 30 degrees and I can also not go negative. So now I can only go like forward the whole time. Pretty good. So if we would basically now take our biker or the camera and just stick it onto the biker as a child object, the camera will follow in whatever the angle is. So we can see this over here. So I disabled gizmos, so now you can see the camera will now follow completely over there. Now we want to make sure that the camera is like always over here, like looking over shoulder, so we can see the buildings on to the right or to the left side, depending on where we want to have that. I'm gonna bring this over here. Maybe I rotate it a bit. What you can also do, if that takes you too long, you can choose a preferred angle and direction or destination, like a distance from the player over here. What we can do is we can now say, when we have selected the main camera, we can say something like edit or game object, align with view. So the camera will now align the view with whatever this shaded mode or this actual camera view, current view is going to be. Of course, it depends on the aspect ratio you're using over there. So whenever I now press play, we should be able to see that the camera is following up over there. We cannot see anything over there, but you can see the camera follows our player. We are able to put in, well, not here, but in the game view, do like a negative or positive. The downside, as you can see right now, is the camera rotates with the player because we linked it or made sure that it is like targeting the main or is like connected to the main player over there. That's not what you want, because you don't want to rotate the camera with that. Well, probably, but most of the time you don't want that. In that case, you need to make sure that the camera now follows like in a straight line, maybe with a distance to the player if possible, or you just want to keep the distance like between the two. So, and whenever the distance is too high that the camera just follows like smoothly, you can also use, there are several scripts already flying around over there if you don't like the approach I'm using here. So once again, 100 possibilities to do that. So what we basically should be able to do is we should have the possibility to target something which we want to follow. So we set like a player as a target, and then we make sure that the main camera is always keeping the distance to the target, so whatever the distance basically is. But we do not go and do the rotation. So, and even for that, there are hundreds of possibilities. I have a target camera video about that already, so check out my channel if you want to go a bit deeper into that. And what I would do is, well, good question. Maybe I'm gonna take the player script and let the player take or grab the camera behind it. Like I forgot I don't have to double click this. It gonna go and reopens now my IDE over there. So just a second. So probably we can do something like we measure the distance or the actual distance between those two, and we're gonna try to keep that. Maybe we can directly talk to the main camera, so it is going to follow the player over here. Of course, we can do this in update, but we can also do this in, I believe so, in a late update, or even put this into a coroutine. Basically, that shouldn't make any difference over here. So what would I do over there? Once again, if you have any trouble in finding the correct answer, you can always, once again, make use of Google and make use of the Unity API. There are hundreds of prepared infos about the problem you might go and encounter over here. So once again, what would I do? I would maybe measure the distance between those two, or what could we do? Yeah, could be. Gonna clean this. I don't need this anymore. How do we do this? Oh, by the way, guys, if you have anything you want to like, if you want to give me some hints or something like that, you're always free to do so. So no worries about it. Let's see. So what we could do is we could do a loop between two positions, but that basically might not be correct over here. Well, what we can do is we can basically we could do something like that. We have another object sitting on the player. Let's assume we want our main camera to be directly where it currently is. So first off, what I would do is I would create an empty, and this is going to be like my main or my camera target. So I can easily replace the main camera's target position to whatever this game object's camera or position is. Let's take a look into this. So let's assume this is my camera target. Why did I create this onto the main camera is because it's now directly sitting on a 000 onto this. Now I take the cam target and put this onto my biker, so it is like, the actual target my camera wants to go to. So we don't really go for the biker, since we want to or would have to calculate the distances on all three axes and try to keep track on this. Or we just store the camera's start position. That would be a possibility over here as well, by the way. Or we're gonna just take a cam target over here for the actual main camera. Let me just create a new script for this. So I just name this one cam follow, whatever. And of course we open this one in Mono Develop Visual Studio or whatever IDE we are using over here. We're gonna put this camera target or this cam follow thing to the main camera directly over there. So just by dragging it over. I hope my IDE is going to open soon. If that is not the case, we double click and reopen again. I wait for my firewall once again, which tells me to build all that content. So, and what we now can do is we can, for example, put in update, or probably also late update should be more than enough over here. We just want to make sure that we keep track on the actual the cam target. So what we can do is we can put a game object over there. We can also put a transform or even a vector of that. So game object cam target, something like that. So we need to basically just drag it inside the slot. And what we want to do is that we now move our camera like onto the basically just only onto the y value or the y, no, in this case it's the z axis. We want to just make sure that our cam position is equal to the cam target position. So cam, or in this case it's going to be transform dot position is equal to cam target dot transform dot position. So we don't lerp anything, we just now take the camera and put this onto the camera target, and we're gonna update this the whole time into a late update. So let's test it out. Once again, there is no lerping, no smoothness or something, because we would otherwise have to store first the original position of the camera, then we take the goal position, and then we lerp between those two. Otherwise, lerping doesn't really work. So, and we can now take this cam target and bring this into our main camera target script, like into the slot. So I drag this over there, and when I now press play, and once again the main camera is not part of the biker anymore, but you can see now it just keeps that, so that the cam target is now taking the position of this. If I now move left and right, okay, that's another issue probably. Let's see. No, but that's also a bad one. So, well, not a good idea. So probably we're gonna catch the distance between those 2 points, so we don't rotate the camera, because once again over here, whenever we rotate the biker right now, this cam target object, let me show you with an icon, if we now go and rotate this guy, the cam target is moving with it, so that's not a good way over there. So we better go, I guess, and store the position between the player and the target, and try to keep that distance anyhow between those two. So let's take a look into this. Well, the object to follow is going to be the, well, in this case maybe not the cam target, but maybe the player. So in that case we want to store anyhow the position of the current camera. Just let's try this out. We're gonna take position is equal to transform dot position. So this is the camera position, and now we probably wanna how do we do this? Maybe we don't. Maybe we just move the camera like we do with that. Let me try that. I mean, why not? That should be the most easiest way over here. We just take the update loop over there and we just move the camera in the same speed as we do with the player. So in that case, if the player has a speed of 2 or a speed of 4, doesn't really matter. We just need to make sure that we actually move the same with the same speed over there. So we basically need to take the complete inputs for the speed over there and bring them into the main camera. And probably it's even easier. Maybe we're gonna do something like camera dot main dot transform dot position, and we basically do the same as we do over here with this speed. Like we're gonna take the same input, like transform dot forward times speed times time dot delta time. We only do the forward movement, so we don't have the left and right thing over there. Don't forget to save. And basically we could get rid of the complete stuff over here from the main camera, since we now drive it over the special keyword camera.main transform.position. For that to work 100%, we need to make sure that the main camera is tagged as main camera. So keep that in mind. So let the compiler run, see if there's any error. It seems so. It's expecting a semicolon. Of course, we're gonna give it to it. And when we now press play, the camera should move the same speed as the player does. And if we now go left and right, well, of course, here in this, the camera still goes forward, it seems. And it basically stays near to the player, so it doesn't move away or anything. I believe that is not a bad way over there. I'm not quite sure if... Oh, we of course need to make sure that we don't use the transform forward of the actual player over here. That's why it was like completely following over here. We need to make sure that we take the main cameras. Well, in this case, it's not the forward axis. I believe that doesn't really work, since the forward axis of the camera is going to be in another direction. So we need to take the world axis, something like vector3 dot... What is it called? Vector3 dot forward is probably the world axis now, so it's unrelated to other game objects. It's now more like related to the world's forward axis. So let's see if that works. I'm gonna move left. And as you can see, the camera now will keep on going onto the world's z-axis, basically, or the forward axis. Of course, our driver can now go rather far away, so we need to make sure, of course, later on in the game logic, that he's not able to bypass a specific point. So, for example, a specific distance, so he's never going to be outside of view over there. Good, so what I do is I get rid of this. I get rid of the cam follow script over there, because I believe that is not a bad choice. Now let's go over the spawning of the buildings. Since we want to make sure that these buildings are going to be spawned, like maybe automatically, we can pre-spawn like 10 or 20, or whatever the amount is going to be. And we can start literally like over here or wherever we want to. What we also want to have is something like a plane, which is going to constantly follow our biker. Anyhow, so we gonna move just the buildings, or we just move the biker. We can also prepare the complete scene by setting everything up by code completely over here. So let's start with a plane. Just a simple one, nothing fancy. We want to make sure that we zero this one out. You can always go to reset. So the biker sits on a plane. I'm gonna create some dark material, like a dark gray for the road. So I name this, you can name this asphalt or gray, whatever. We're gonna tint it like so. I don't want to have like any metallic view, so I get rid of smoothness over there and put this onto my plane. So I can now manipulate the plane so that it basically represents the road. And there are multiple things we can do with that. So for example, our level can be in a specific amount of, distance. And we can keep it as it is, or we can also automate the creation of the road or of the plane. So whenever our driver or biker later on goes through some kind of, let's say, through some kind of a goal or collider or something, that we can say, okay, round clear, this is your score, this is your points, and so on and so forth. So what we now can do is we can now say we want to spawn these houses automatically, randomly, and make them like bad houses or good houses, like by just using color codes or just coloring them into any color, since currently they are just white. Probably we're going to do something like, okay, we're going to paint or tint the main building of each building set, I would say, to be a red or a white color, or red or light gray, or whatever color, basically it doesn't matter. So we have a difference between subscribers and non-subscribers. So whoever has subscribed to the newsletter gets a white building, who never has been or is not in the subscription list gets a red building, or something like that. So okay, we're gonna put in, or we need to damage the red buildings anyhow, like throwing the newspaper into the window to make them subscribers, like for the next round or something like that. Once again, there are hundreds of possibilities. So if that level is a preset level, we just need to basically now fill buildings onto the left side. We're gonna maybe extend the road quite a bit, so it's not looking too shabby, and we can basically just put in the buildings to wherever we want to. I'm gonna rotate them, we can tint them, we can bring them next to our driver over here, and we can set them up so that they are like, you know, on the road over there. We can also put like other planes or boxes which are going to have some, let's say, some green areas. Let me create some materials pretty quick so we see some differences over here. What you can always do is duplicate existing material. Just Control D and then make this one maybe, I don't know, a darkish green over there. And I just rename this by hitting F2, so we can do something like green. And you can put this literally onto any single object over here. So this is like grassy areas, and then probably I'm gonna take this part over there and make this something like blue, or so we can see this easier. You can also keep this one, you know, any color you like to, or set this one to anything. You can make this also red or whatever, basically doesn't matter. I believe I'm gonna stay with blue. Hit F2 to rename, and then we just name this material blue. Gonna put this like onto this part, and I would just drive this part over here, like this part of the actual building. I would just drive this later on by code to be, is it a subscriber, like maybe randomize these, is it a subscriber or isn't that? And when the first randomization is done, we need to store this information anyhow, like between levels or something, so we later on know who is going to be a subscriber and who is not. And so we're gonna keep the, like, we would keep the buildings being whatever the settings have been, so we take them literally into the next round, and or just update them accordingly for the next round. So, and what we can do is, once again, we can do all of that stuff randomized. We can literally go and design this to our needs. So when it comes to 3D, you want to make sure, of course, that you increase your modeling skills as good as you can. And so you have the possibility to basically design your complete setup over here. Once again, I tint this area's green over here, and this is going to be blue. Good. And of course, if you have something special, like maybe this part over here, you can also tint this into any other color you like. And so we have another house over there. Once again, you can create prefabs out of them and later on automate all that content. But first off, you want to make sure that they are all tinted, like everything is green or red or whatever. Like if you have like this dock area, if there is a dock inside as some kind of a hazard or trap, then you probably want to take a look into this as well and make it maybe brownish. So people see better what that is going to be about. Probably put a dock later on as a 3D model around it. Gonna make it brownish, rename it brown, something like that, and just tint it, and the rest is going to stay like green and green over here as well. If you want to make this upper areas over there brownish or whatever color, of course, well, completely up to you. Once again, however you design your game is completely, once again, up to you. Gonna take my last one. The pivot points are a bit off over there, but no worries about it so far. Gonna rotate them, bring them wherever I need them. So here we got this part like under this roof area. Gonna put some green over here. Pretty good. So, and now we got, or I have created like those 3 or 4 prefabs over there, or they are not prefabs yet, but we can easily do this. For that, usually you create a new folder for this to keep everything clean and yeah, actually good organized. And then I just put some original prefabs over here. I'm using Unity 2K19.18F1. So if you have a newer version, some things here and there might change. If you have an older version, there might be other different things running over there as well. I forgot to tint one of these mailbox areas, so I'm gonna open the prefab pretty quick. And as you can see here, the mailbox didn't got any bluish material, so I just drag it over. Make sure you make this directly inside the prefab so everything will be updated here as well. Good. And since I now have all these, I have all the prefabs now, I could basically automate the creation of that by just, you know, putting a building here, then increase a number by an offset, and then I can randomize the creation of the level. I can do this like in the yeah, like directly over here if I want to. So for something like, I'm gonna keep, the first numbers in mind over here, like -6 on X and maybe a 7 as a start point, and then add up by, let's say, 15 or something into the Z value, so I can randomize these buildings over here, so there can also be multiple times the same ones. If you want to make it like an unlimited runner, you have to create a spawner object, which is automatically spawning these buildings. But then is the question, if it doesn't make sense to make something like a plane over here instead of, spawning this lower area here as well. So again, there are hundreds of possibilities for designs or for game design in this case. Once again, we can also do something like when we drive into any obstacle, like into a trash can or so, we're gonna lose a life. And when we have like lost 3 lives, or we maybe at a specific timer or a specific distance, we haven't reached enough enough score or something like that, then we wanna go forward and or lose that, or we're gonna lose some subscribers here and there and so on and so forth. So the subscriber stuff in that case might change then, because we don't really get subscribers in the end. So, and I would go just design one of these levels so we get the actual mechanics for throwing done, as well as we want to make sure that we are able to maybe bring our newspaper directly inside the box by using some colliders, which are taking care of that, and then maybe enable another game object which is like already sitting inside over here, so we see, okay, we did hit that, we're gonna place that onto any of these sides, maybe like just a cylinder or something, and whenever we are done with that, then we delete our actual thrown newspaper. And when we hit it somewhere else, then we probably want to drop it just downwards over here and just bring it onto the position over there, or we just do something like an instant score. Once again, we can also put something like extra objects over here, like a doormat, where we can put these points together. So for example, we throw that thing not directly in here, but maybe onto some kind of a door or doormat once again. Then we're gonna get a different score, maybe not 1,000 points by hitting this one completely directly correct, but maybe just 500 points by hitting the doormat. And if we hit somewhere else, but there or there, but we have thrown, then we maybe give just a small, small score, maybe something like a 100, or I don't know. You have the chance to do this completely on your own. Okay, so what I would do now is maybe we just start with this row mechanic. So what we now want to check is, of course, when we drive around with our driver, and we're going to check our view over here, that we are able to, move along over here. So we get an idea behind that. We can also give some speed over there. And it somehow seems that the camera, as you can see, is moving faster, or meanwhile we are driving sideways, we are actually slower. So the main camera needs to keep track on the driver's actual speed, it seems. So we need to remanage the camera a bit later on. So let's go with this row mechanic. So we can basically try to hit one of these areas over here. What I would do is I would once again prepare something which looks like a newspaper, which we can fill in this little box. So in that case, I would do something like, which is it? This one? Would do something like 3D object cylinder. And I would just, bring this one downwards, rotate it by 90 degrees. And then just bring this somewhere here. So we have any visual representation that we hit our mailbox or the mailbox of the customer, something like that. So we see, okay, whenever we hit the hitbox of the actual mailbox over there, that we activate this game object, which is going to be like, the cylinder. We can also always name this or rename this one to be newspaper. We can literally copy and paste this to all the other ones here as well, so we get an idea about it. So copy, Control D for copy. Then I bring this over here. It doesn't really matter where it is, but we want to make sure that it is the correct child of this newspaper box. So in that case, we're gonna take this newspaper and make a child of line 004. This is for me, for you. Hopefully you have a better naming convention when you're doing modeling. And then I copy this port over there as well. And bring this into this mailbox. And of course I want to make sure that I put it onto the correct line over there as a child. Duplicate this once again and bring this all over the place to the last building over there, something like this. And of course I want to make sure that I select the correct one. It's line 12 for my, or in my case, and then we are good to go. All these newspapers will be disabled objects, so we don't see them from the beginning. And now we want to make sure that we're gonna take these lines over there and we're gonna put a collider around it. So probably a box collider is going to be the best solution over there. So you can see the goal is rather small, so we have to be rather precise in throwing, kind of. And yeah, that's probably everything we need for this. So, and we maybe want to do something like a trigger collider, so it doesn't really matter if we hit the bottom or the top. We just want to make sure that whenever we are triggering this, that we activate the newspaper which is sitting inside this box. To do that, we're going to create a new C# script, which is going to be our, let's say, mailbox script. So once again, if the mailbox get hit by something, it activates its own like child object or something like that. Again, there are hundreds of possibilities to design the actual code. So for example, we can do something like just on collision enter, and whatever collision is going to happen, we're going to bypass this one or just activate all its child's objects, for example. Or we can just define a specific game object or multiple specific game objects we want to pass into the like we want to activate over there. So what we can do is each mailbox once again has a newspaper, so we can literally go and say something like public game object newspaper. This is the one we want to activate later on, so we don't need start and update. Since we are using just another simple route over there, we're going to make use of the on collision enter or on trigger enter in this case. So on trigger enter. We need to make sure that we are actually writing this one 100% precise. It's with a big O, big T, and big E. It's necessary, and also it needs to get a, I believe, a collider, COL. And if it's not a collider, then it's a collision. But I believe it's a collider. So what we now want to do is we want to check if we get hit by something, for example, by something tagged with a whatever. With any tag like a projectile or another newspaper, the one we want to throw into the direction of that. So in this case, we want to do something like if col dot, now we can use compare tag, or just if the collider dot tag is going to be equal to, and then in quotes we're going to put in something like newspaper. Compare tag works with parentheses over here. So if we compare a tag and it is like of type newspaper or has the tag type newspaper, then we want to do something. What we want to do is we want to say newspaper.setActive, and then we're going to say in parentheses we say true. We want to activate this newspaper. What we also want to do at this point is we want to get score here. So we're gonna talk, for example, to a game manager or anything else, and just make sure that we get the correct score. Don't forget to save, and that's pretty much everything. Now we just need to make sure that each mailbox get our mailbox script, and we put in the actual game logic for the newspaper itself. So first off, we drag the script mailbox in here and take the deactivated newspaper and bring this over there. Good. So this is once again only for this little mailboxes over there. I dragged just these in here. You can also play sound and stuff like that, you know, nothing fancy overall. I'm gonna drag them once again all over here. Once I'm done with all the setups, I'm gonna update the prefabs, of course. So we don't need to do stuff twice. Okay, so now everything is done over there. I select the prefab over there, go to overrides and say apply all. I want to do this for all those other buildings here as well. Overrides, apply all, overrides, apply all. Same for the first one, of course. So they are all now part, like the script is part of the prefab as well as the setup newspapers are part of that. Good. Let's throw a newspaper. First off, we need to have some kind of an input, like, for example, we're gonna have a, like we press the spacebar, for example, then we're gonna do a throw mechanic. And to throw that, we probably want to do something where we have a spawn point, like sitting, you know, over here where the hands are, or maybe a slight bit above, which has something like a throw direction. So for example, we can take the throw direction so that we are always throwing this newspaper like into a direction of 90 degrees to the player. So whatever the rotation of the player is, it's going to fly like in any of these directions over there. Let's try that out. So first we go to the biker. I'm gonna create an empty game object. I make sure that I bring this like over there, wherever I want this to spawn. So this is basically my spawn point. I can also, you know, spawn point, rename this so I know what's going on. And you can also give it an icon and something like that. And if you want to make sure that he's always driving or throwing over the forward axis of the spawn point, you can do that. You just need to rotate this by 90 degrees. You can check this out by using the local angle, like over here. So you see, okay, it's taking the Z value, like the forward axis of this particular point, spawn point, and throw it in this direction. So whenever we would go like straight and we would be over here, then we would be able to hit it. But of course that would be too easy, so we need to put later on some trash cans onto the field over there, and also keep the player like in between the house wall over here and maybe a maximum of a half of a street or something like that in between. So once again, keep that in mind. There are hundreds of things you need to take care of that overall. Okay, cool. So now we're gonna be able to spawn something. We need to first create something we can spawn. So probably the best idea is I'm gonna duplicate this newspaper from any of these buildings, since I have the size of that. Then I'm gonna bring it out here and activate it, and maybe put this like next to my guy over here and see how huge it's going to be. Yeah, that looks kind of okay-ish. So this is going to be the object we want to throw. So we want to make sure that we first off rename it once again. Since that is like our projectile, we need to create a prefab out of this as well. Then we want to make sure that we create a new tag. So we go to add tag plus and put a newspaper. The tag is important once again for the collision handling or for the trigger handling later on over there. We have a capsule collider on this, so it is basically also a trigger. It can also stay a collider, it doesn't really matter. What I just noticed is that we need to make sure that one of these is going to have a rigid body, so we can actually detect the correct hi. I can't see you, I can't read your name, but I believe I'm gonna name you Ventillo, so thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this one. And what we want to take is this newspaper. We want to throw this once again into the Z direction of our spawn point. And this newspaper needs to have a rigid body component. We do not directly work with the rigid bodies, so we don't push or put a force onto this rigid body, even if we could. Maybe we're gonna do later on, since we could basically also make use of the gravity. So whenever the newspaper hits some, let's say, obstacle, it could automatically go downwards. We just need to make sure that we disable this the rigid body whenever we don't need it anymore. So whenever it's like landing and is, you know, not moving anymore, that we just change it itself to be is kinematic, something like that. So maybe we're gonna do this somewhere, because when we throw something with using the rigid body, we can also give it some kind of a torque, meaning we can like rotate the newspaper, you know, on the y-axis, for example, or in this case now the local z-axis. So we might need to go and change the rotation of that. We'll see. Okay, so what we need to do is, once again, we need to throw that, and we want to push that thing. First off, we need to create a prefab of our newspaper, something like that. Once again, I keep the capsule collider, I keep it on being a collider and not a trigger, so it probably is easier. And later we need to just see how hard we need to press the newspaper, you know, into any direction, and give it maybe some kind of a, you know, a gravity and something like that. And if the gravity drags it like below a specific number, then we just disable it completely as well. So for example, when we throw this, like, you know, through these buildings and it's like going onward over there, it wouldn't make sense to keep calculating the rigid body, so we need to deactivate the kinematics or activate kinematics later on. So I have this little newspaper over here, so I just get rid of it because I created, once again, a prefab already. Once again, you can also go and design fancy newspapers over here. Once again, this is more like a prototyping stage, how I would basically go through that. Okay, let's create the throw mechanics. We can basically make use of the player itself. Hi Ezio, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the stream, or enjoyed the stream. So I would go into the player script itself and probably put all the mechanics for the throwing over here as well. So for example, you can always comment things out like this. At the moment we don't need the update loop. And what we want to do is, whenever we later on put a button or press a button, of course we go back into the update loop, and then we need to change the behavior of that. So for the newspaper, you can always once again comment things out to make your life easier. What we need to do is, at first we need to have a public game object which is related to the newspaper, something like the newspaper prefab. Newspaper prefab. And if you have problems later on to find things out, you can always rename them completely to whatever is necessary over there. So this is what we want to spawn, and we want to have later on the connection to the newspaper prefab. We're gonna get it on spawn, and then we push it like onto the z-axis of the spawn object direction, I would say. I don't know, we'll see. So once again, this is what we want to do. We want to spawn this and throw this into the spawn points direction. Let me just get rid of these, so we have a rather clean one. So after all of that, so meanwhile we are rotating around and driving left and right and stuff like that, we want to make sure that we gonna have an input key for throwing. So you can always, once again, throw newspaper, put in any commands over there to help yourself later on to find whatever you do over there. So in this case, if I gonna actually make an input, get key down. So the key in this case, get key down, is probably going to be my spacebar. So something like key code dot space. If I press that, I want to throw that thing, like this newspaper. Of course, I'm gonna make another command, check if I have enough newspapers. Check if enough. Let me close that pretty quick. There was a call, sorry about that. So what I want to do is I want to check if I have enough newspapers later on, so probably a stack of 10 or 5 or 7 or whatever the maximum is going to be. And every time we throw a newspaper, we need to reduce that amount, of course, whenever we throw some. So of course we need to make sure if we have enough. So at first we're gonna do check if enough. So if we have enough newspapers, basically, that's what we want to do at first. Then we want to do spawn that, or just spawn. Like once we know we got enough, we can literally put any integer, for example, something like it doesn't need to be a public, but just an integer amount, or max amount of newspaper. Max amount is equal to 10. And we can also say something like a current amount, so how much we're gonna have current, like whenever we start or something, current amount. So, and if we would do something like a constant, like const int maximum amount, you don't understand much. Oh, that's too bad, since, well, this is not really an advanced tutorial over here, but I prefer you go and check out some, let's say, complete courses, or maybe you gonna start from the beginning, where I just build up and explain everything, which is actually going to, what we do here, or what I do here in this stream. So when we do a const over here, we can use that const and make it so that we can set now the current amount over here. So instead of doing this in start, we can also do something current amount is equal to max amount. So this is only possible when we are using a const over here. If we get rid of const, you're gonna see, nope, that doesn't work. And in this case, we're gonna save or make our life easier. We can also start with an amount of 10 over here already. Like, since these are not public values, it doesn't really matter at the at all. So both works. You can also say something like max amount, or just 10 and 10. So set them by hand. Or the other possibility, if you don't have a const or don't want to use const over there, you can also do something like current amount in start, current amount equals the max amount, or something, not max speed, but max amount, something like that in start. That works as well. So you have hundreds or thousands of possibilities to do that. So again, you can also do something like that. Basically, it doesn't matter. Don't forget to save. So now we know how much we have and how much we can throw around. And now we want to deduct it whenever we spawn that. So first we want to check if we have enough. So in this case we say something like if, our amount, whatever our amount is, our current amount is bigger than 0, so we have more than 0 actually, or at least 1, then we want to do our actual spawn mechanic, something like here. So next one is we need to have the spawn point, since we want to know the transforms, the rotation and stuff like that of the spawn point. So we can literally make use of the public game object. Gonna name this spawn point. We need to drag it onto this particular spot. We can also try to find it inside that on start, but basically it doesn't really matter. It's probably easier just to set it up by hand, so we don't have too much code over there. What we want to do is we gonna take the spawn points like rotation and throw it into the forward axis. Like first off, we need to instantiate it into that. Also, we want to get the information about the rigid body onto the newspaper, so we can actually give it a, let's say, push or torque into the forward direction, or both. Basically, like a force, like an impulse, as well as the rotation on that. So how do we do this? First, we want to instantiate a new newspaper. So instantiate. What do we want to instantiate is our newspaper prefab. And where do we want to instantiate is basically, of course, the spawn point position, or spawn point dot transform dot position. And now we need to also define the rotation. And since we want to make use of the, or probably we want to make use of the rotation of the spawn point, we can say spawn point dot rotation. If you don't like to do this, spawn point dot transform dot rotation, of course. If you don't want to do this, you can also make use of the quaternion dot identity. Quaternion dot identity basically means it's the stored prefab rotation. Basically, it doesn't matter. Since we want to grab now the rigid body from this instantiated newspaper prefab, we need to create an instance over here. So we need to say game object new, like this is going to be, like our newspaper over here. We cannot make use of new, so we need to rename this to news. That's why I had this red underline over here, since new is a special keyword for new instances of strings or parameters or variables or whatever. And so we're gonna create now a new game object, call it news, instantiate that onto the spawn point position, and of course the spawn point's rotation. Now what we can do is we can store the rigid body of the news somewhere and give it a push or torque or whatever into the correct direction, and of course let gravity, work on its own. In this case, we're gonna say something like we store rigid body. We can name it RB is equal to news dot get component of type rigid body. If you're using 2D, of course, you're gonna make use of a 2D, rigid body and so on. Now what we can put is we can put some velocity or push or torque or whatever onto the rigid body. So in that case, we can do something like RB dot, and now we can put something like add force, and we can now put a force onto a into a direction of a vector. So basically we can make use probably of our, you can split it up like X, Y, and Z. We can, take the rotation now of the spawn point. And since that is going to follow our player, since this is part of it. So I would do something like new vector 3. Or maybe we don't even need to do this with a new vector 3, but something like spawn point dot transform dot forward. So since we were rotating this one to the left, like by 90 degrees, and then we can do something like force mode, something like an impulse. We can also just do a force, I guess. There's one more thing I don't see over here, is the power of the force. So RB dot add force. Sometimes my IDE doesn't work. Let's see if there's anything else what we can do. Maybe we're gonna just say something like forward times, and then maybe we're gonna implement something like a force of 5 or 10 or whatever. Maybe we're gonna put this into an extra variable over here in a float force, and we set this one to be equal to 5f, at least for the moment, so we can change the values later on and we don't need to go always downwards for easy access. We can also do something like a torque. So rb dot add torque. A torque, once again, is something like more or less like a rotation, and we can basically play around with that. Something like new vector 3, and then we put first off 0, 0, 0, and what we now can do is in the center, like we want to rotate this around the y-axis, we can randomize that. Something like random dot range between, I don't know, 0 and 180. So 0, 180, and put a semicolon over here. Let's test it out. So we go now to our biker itself, because that is where our script currently sits. We're gonna drag our spawn point into the spawn point part. We go to our prefabs folder and put the newspaper into the newspaper part. Of course, my little houses or buildings over here, they don't have any colliders, so I want to make use of a mesh collider. These mesh colliders will automatically figure out the meshes and will form a mesh for us. We don't need to put in any rigid bodies over here, I guess. Well, probably we need to. Yeah, let's just do this. I'll put a rigid body, but we need to get rid of its gravity and we need to activate this kinematic. Probably that's the most interesting part over here. So once again, I want to put a mesh collider onto this, and same for the other ones over here. There are multiples. I can also put it like onto the roof if we would by accident throw it too high, but I believe that wouldn't actually happening. So again, put a mesh collider and a rigid body, and deactivate gravity and activate this kinematic. Same for the plane, by the way, needs to have something at least, so we have a mesh collider over here. Once again, I'm not quite sure if we need a rigid body onto this, but since we work with collisions, we probably have to. So mesh collider over here, and I'm gonna put a rigid body here as well. Once again, and put this here as well. So a rigid body with just a kinematic one and a mesh collider. Okay, let's test it out. So let's drive and hit the spacebar and see if we can throw something. Non-convex mesh colliders with rigid bodies are not working, so we need to, or we would have to make them convex if we want to make use of the rigid bodies over here. So I would go, well, yeah, just go convex. So we just change this one over here to be a convex one. Same here, put it to convex, otherwise we get problems in the code. Doesn't let me connect to it. Something like that. And something like that. So press play and see again what's going on. Any issues? Nope, no issues. So when I hit space now, you can see I'm actually able to fire or just give some force to these newspapers. Since I don't reduce the amount of these newspapers, you know, I don't have, or currently I have more than enough, so I don't have only 10. And what I want to do is I want to increment the force now to be thrown a bit faster or a bit, you know, further, like maybe I double the force. And as you can see, gravity works well, and we don't even need to have any rigid bodies onto the buildings, since we don't make use of, you know, direct connection. Let's see if we find a way to hit one of these mailboxes to activate the game object, but it doesn't seem to work completely correct over here onto the mailbox, since we may have forgot to do something. But we can easily test this. Oh, we did not tag our newspaper, so I'm gonna tag my newspaper inside the prefab and test again. So we drive, gonna give some speed. I didn't hit. Yes, there we go. As you can see, this newspaper just got visible inside over here, and we are good to go. We just need to make sure that whenever we hit that the other object, whichever, like the other object, gets destroyed on hit over here. Anyhow, I think we are going to give it a bit more beef. As you can see, we are able to throw this like anywhere. That's awesome. Once again, we still have the camera issue over here, since the camera does not cover up completely, like it cannot hold the speed at the moment, but that's totally fine, at least for this stage of prototyping once again such a game. Cool. So now we can update the biker. Basically we don't have any preview or any prefab of that, I mean, so it doesn't really matter. We can update the houses once again, since we don't really need the actual rigid bodies on them, so we can try that out easily. Just remove them and make sure that we are using convex, or not using convex anymore, and see if that still works, so we are able to, like, you know, throw these newspapers onto them. Pretty good, works nice, awesome. Now hi Oscar, thanks a lot for tuning in. Yeah, maybe a fat girl on a moped is a bit better, but you know, I wanted to make sure that it's rather easy to follow up, and people probably understand better how things working. So on these little grass areas, I would put something like box colliders, since they are just boxes over here, no issues with that. So we can basically, you know, they don't fall into the grass, like the newspapers don't fall into the grass. Maybe we're gonna put a collider onto this, you know, on this dog hut here as well. Maybe I'm gonna put a mesh collider instead. This one here, once again, a box collider. The box colliders are a bit easier to calculate, so they not take, let's say, more than necessary resources. Mesh colliders are a bit more cost intense in case of calculation. So we are driving here, and now you can see they are also falling you know, like onto the grass over there, and some of them are keep on rolling, so we want to make sure that we don't overdo it over there, and probably whenever, like after a couple of seconds, we want to deactivate maybe the box collider onto this. Pretty good. Anyhow, this doesn't seem to be rather challenging over there, so we might want to, you know, put some obstacles, so whenever we run into an obstacle that we are going to lose a life, and probably, you know, reset to the beginning if we want to, or we're gonna, I don't know, hop just 10 centimeters back or whatever, or 2 meters like backwards, and then start from this point, like on a specific, let's say Y, or in this case X position over there. So anyhow, I think the speed of my player is quite a bit too small over there. Maybe we're gonna put something like a 3 or a 4 already, which feels a bit better. Maybe a speed up speed to be 6. I just play around with these. By the way, this speed value needs to be changed. Even if I updated this one in here, it needs to be changed directly on the biker because it's a public value. We do not override it. As you can see, it still is on number 2, so I changed it here by hand to 4. So we drive a bit faster right now. Once again, the camera still has issues, but when I now, you know, move around over here, it feels a bit harder actually. So, and we are able to throw our newspapers. Once again, we lose the track of the player. We're gonna have to figure the camera out a bit more, since whenever we go like diagonal, we're gonna lose speed. So once again, we're gonna take a look into this camera issue. Let's do it right now. So currently what we do is the biker drives the actual camera, and we're gonna do this in the update loop, like over here, and it keeps on, you know, driving that by the speed over here. And probably that's not a good idea over here. Maybe we really need to go and target the, you know, the actual game objects, like whoever we want to target, that the camera is always like following along. And we're gonna have, like, once again, several possibilities over here. Probably I'm gonna take a look into another project of mine and gonna grab some code over there, so I have a bit easier life over there to do this. Because why don't we take or make use of stuff we already have used before? Just give me a second so we can go and continue on that. Okay, so I open the cam follow script, I get rid of this one, and I gonna, instead of using a game object, maybe I'm gonna just name this one target. Maybe it's, well, it's of type transform. I still have like a cam target over there, and we're gonna need to now store, as I explained before, the distance between the actual game object, like between the biker or whatever the target is going to be, and the current position, like, of the camera. So I'm gonna get rid of this and put something like 2 distances, like on the Z and the X-axis, because we don't really change the height of the camera, but we need to recalculate X and Z value, because these might or may change. So we are going to kind of follow a bit easier. Maybe we'll only do it on the Z value. We'll see. So first I would say something like float dist X, so the distance of the X value. I'm gonna put a dist Z for the distance of the Z value, and on start we just recalculate them, we calculate them. So the dist X is going to be the transform position of the camera, so transform the position.x, and we now need to negate that from our cam target. transform.position.x. Or in this case, position.x, because it is of type transform already. So camTarget.position.x. We negate that, so we have a distance between those two. Doesn't matter if that is a positive or a negative number. We're going to do the same for the z value. So we say transform.position.z, and we negate this one by the camTarget.transform. Well, not transform once again. It is of type transform again. So just position.z. If you're using game objects, of course, you're going to take the transform.position.x or z. Okay, so now we store this information on start. So wherever that target is, we're going to store this information. Now we want to recalculate the actual position. But to do that, of course, as we did with the rotation, we need to store the position in a vector3 first. So we say vector3 POS. And now we add 2x. So pos x is equal to our target. Well, maybe we don't do this on x, but let's see. So we're gonna take our camTarget dot position.x, and we're gonna add our to our distx over there. Then we're gonna take our y value. Basically, the y value doesn't change, so we don't really need to put in anything. So we take the z value now. So pos z is going to be equal to target, or in this case, camTarget.position.z, and we add the distance of the z value right now. Now we just need to reposition the actual camera. So we say transform.position is equal to. Now we should be able to lerp this information between the position and the current position. So we say vector3 dot lerp. Since we have like an old position where we came from, and we're going to be able to, well, we should be able to say something like transform.position. So that's where we come from. We go to the POS, so the calculate position by, and then the last value is going to be, you know, the speed times time dot delta time. We don't have a speed value yet, so we implement this. So float speed, and we can put this to whatever speed we want, maybe something between 2 and 4 or 5 or 3. I don't know. We're gonna have to test this out here as well. Don't forget to save. And now we should be able to follow our target with that. And so we need to make sure that we don't drive the camera anymore with the player. So I disable this line over here, just comment it out for the moment, and go and make sure that the cam follow script once again is going to be sitting on our main camera. So once again, main camera is a single object over there. We wait for the compiler to run, so it's getting updated the view. I'm gonna go once again and drag the cam follow script onto the camera. And now we just need to define the cam target. In this case, it can be the biker, I guess. It can also be the cam target on the player itself, but the biker probably is going to be the best. So what it does is now, as you can see, it updates the y, the height value, to be 0 because it's getting overwritten by 0. So in that case, we're gonna make sure that the pos.y is going to be equal to whatever the initial or the current, you know, the current what shall I say, the current position should be. So the current y position, I guess. So probably it's something like transform.position.y. Let's see if that works. If it doesn't, then we're gonna take anything else. Let's see. So now we're gonna have that. We're gonna drive around, and the cam is now smoothly, kind of smoothly, following our you know, our biker over here, our moped, our newspaper deliver guy, and it kind of keeps the distance always between the two. Pretty good. That's a bit better than before, I guess, so we don't lose track over there. We have now an automated cam target. If you don't like the idea behind using the x distance, but you only want to do this, you know, on the, you know, only on the z value, so wherever it is driving forward, but keeping like the distance or have some distance between them, then you just make sure that this x value is going to be only transform dot position dot x. So we don't really update the transform position dot x to whatever the distance to that is going to be. And so let's try that out again. So we can basically drive, or should be able to drive away from the camera. As you can see, we can do this, but we can also come closer to the camera. So these are the two differences. And we can, of course, throw all our newspapers over here as well. Nice. So next one is, well, what do we need to have here? We are constantly driving in one direction. We want to make sure that we don't crash now, I guess. So whenever we are hitting an obstacle, that we want to avoid that to be. Also, we need some score anyhow. So probably we're going to start with that. So you can be as creative as you like. You can make some windows over here, and whenever we are now throwing maybe our newspaper into the window, that we're gonna maybe lose some score if we want to, or we just get a small number, or maybe something ugly is going to happen, something like the dog comes out and chases you. Maybe it chases you because it likes to, or not. Basically, you can do anything with that throw. Once again, you can also have something like a subscription base theme as they have in the original, like when you throw it inside the window, that you're gonna unsubscribe subscribed ones and vice versa. So the ones which haven't subscribed yet to the newspaper will do that afterwards, like in the next round or whatever. Okay, so let's get about score. Like whenever we hit this one, we want to get like a huge number, something like 1,000 points, and maybe want to show that somewhere, I don't know, on screen. And we want to end the game like after, I don't know, whenever we hit some other collider. Once again, we can put like 20 or 10 of these buildings around here and so on. There's one thing we don't have yet, is a collision object which is directly sitting on our biker. So we cannot really keep track of his position, like we cannot keep him inside the world over there. But we're gonna take care of that in a moment. Let's create a new C# script, and this is going to be our game manager. You can also name this one game logic, but game manager gets a nice little gear icon over here, as you can see. So you automatically know, okay, everything, like every game logic is going to be inside the game manager. You can create an empty game object, which is maybe sitting on 000. Basically, it doesn't really matter. And then you drag the game manager script onto it, so we can get rid, or actually we can get score, show score, connect, UI and so on, everything to the game manager. So we're gonna make this one like a static game object, so we can completely keep track on every necessary step, like every score and stuff like this. So what we want to do is we want to keep start. Well, basically we're gonna rename start to be an awake method, since we want to make a small singleton over here, so we can easily access the game manager from any point in the game. So it's going to be a public static game manager, and we just give it a name, something like instance, so we know it's the game manager instance we are talking to. And in awake, we want to make sure that we say instance is equal to this. So whenever we now want to access the game manager, we just call game manager.instance, and then we do whatever we want. For example, we can call a public function in here, something like public add score. And open close parentheses. Of course, we need to define a type. In this case, it's a void type, since it doesn't return any. Open close curly brace, pretty good. Now we just need to have a value which is storing this information, like an integer or float. It doesn't need to be public, but it's easier to, let's say, visualize if that is working or not. But we don't necessarily have to. So we can put in something like an integer. You can also make a serialized property, I guess, for this integer, so you can see this also inside the inspector, even if it is a private variable. So we're gonna create an int score or something like that. So whenever we add score, we can put in like any argument, something like int underscore score. So what we need to do is now we take our current score and we say plus equal underscore score. So we always add up to our current score. If there's a negative number coming in, then it will be negated, of course. We can now save, And we want to make sure that when our player, well, let's see, where's our newspaper script? We don't have a newspaper script, but we have the mailbox script. So whenever we now hit with our newspaper, we're gonna get hit from a newspaper. We can talk to the game manager and update it with the score. In this case, we're gonna talk to it like, as I said before, GameManager.instance.add score. And now we can define how much points we want, maybe 1,000. And then we're gonna get added to the actual Game Manager instance. Once again, I believe we can do something like in square brackets serialized field. Don't forget to save. So in here we should still see then the score. Otherwise it's not visible. We can also play around with that since it's now a serialized field, but later on you want to get rid of that since that doesn't really make sense to have it there. So let's try to get 1,000 points when we are hitting the, like the newspaper box over there. Now you can see I got that twice. So, and what we want to make sure is, since I am able to hit the newspaper box twice, because, when I'm hitting super fast over there, I want to make sure that I can do this only once. And for that, we can protect it with a boolean. We can say something like bool was hit, or something like that. And whenever we are getting hit by a newspaper, we want to set was hit to be equal to true. And if we have been hit, we want to make sure we don't get, or if we not have hit at this point, we want to make sure we gonna, get the score. So in this case, if not was hit, so if was hit is equal to false, then we want to get the score and activate the newspaper inside. And we want to make sure that was hit gets set after this one. Why? Because otherwise we will never be inside this request, because we hit this to true, or make this one true beforehand. So now we get score, or we should get score, only once. Let's try to push hard and see what's going on. See, now I hit it multiple times, the second one just rolled by, and I only got 1 point over there. Same for this one, now I have 2,000 score. Pretty good. So, and I'm gonna rename this one here to be my game logic or something like that, so I can literally put all game logic stuff directly over there. Now we can just connect these these scores to any user interface if we want to, and then we are good to go. And we can basically get a multi 1,000 points or something like that. Also on crash, like when we hit something with our driver, like with our biker, we hit something, we can also reduce score if we want to. So what we want to do now is we want to put some obstacles, maybe like a trash can. I just use simple objects over here. We can put them like anywhere on the screen. We can later on, or you can later on automate that, so they will be everywhere. You can also put a what is it called, like one of these fire things where where water is coming out. I don't know what the name is. So you can put stuff like in the way. You can put them anywhere. Maybe I'm gonna make it a bit smaller, something like that. So we want to make sure that this is going to be well, it doesn't matter if it is a trigger, I guess. Let's make it a trigger. So what we now want to make sure is that this is like tagged correctly. For example, we're gonna hit add tag and do something like a trap or whatever. So basically, whenever we hit a trap, we wanna lose life. And to lose life, of course, we need to have a variable which is sitting later on also in our game manager, so we can reduce life, so we can get, or can be, game over basically. So bring this one down just a bit. Once again, you can make like multiple things, like here on the way, and so on and so forth. You can put in like moving objects which are like coming out over here, and or just moving around the building the whole time, and probably you get hit by that. You can do this with just simple animations, you know, just drive them from one point to another, or go make something like left and right, or coming out and going back. There are hundreds and thousands of possibilities to put all of that stuff together. I go over and cover one of these. So I want to make sure that this one is probably a bit thicker. You can also put like grass areas and everything you don't want to bypass over there. Once again, we need to make sure that we keep our driver inside the playfield anyhow. So maybe we do something like a raycast check to the left and to the right. So we are not able to move further than this raycast checks. There are some problems with that, since the raycast is always going into one specific direction. Maybe we're gonna need to make this like from this point, like from the bottom where the pivot point is, lift it up like a meter, then always shoot it over the y-axis, the x-axis, and the x-axis in the negative and positive direction. So when a distance of that is hitting one of these wall colliders, then we are unable to move, or push into that direction. So we need to make something like a Boolean check, so we return true or false if if an area is actually passable or walkable. So we can keep our driver inside our actual road over here with all our, our traps inside. So these traps now need to get tagged as being a trap. Once again, you can name this whatever, hazard, whatever you want to. And when we now select our biker over here, we want to make sure that this guy does have a collision object. We can also make use of a box collider over there. Anyhow, the man who is sitting on top of that is not recognized, but we can always press on this little button and increase the box collider itself. We can go super fancy with that. We can make it small, we can make it big, whatever. It doesn't actually really matter. It depends on how precise you want to have the collision detection. For example, if you want to be a super ugly game developer, you make it super broad, so even if you try to bypass that, you might be not able to. So once again, if that works over there, then we just now want to make sure that whenever we hit one of these collision, one of these traps, that we're going to lose a life and probably delete the actual hit trap, so we don't, run into this once again. Maybe we're gonna do something like a respawn point or whatever. Basically, it doesn't matter. This is completely up to you later on anyways. So when you're done with that, we deactivate this thing over there. We can do a trigger check. So whenever we now trigger a trap, we want to actually, lose a life and probably destroy whatever we have triggered. In that case, we go back into our, player. And we want to make sure that we do something like void on trigger enter. So whenever something triggers our Paperboy on trigger enter, we want to do something. We need to make sure that one of these objects, like the traps or the player itself, does have a Rigidbody component. Otherwise, we cannot protect or detect any collisions. So we need to take care of that afterwards. So what we now can do is, of course, we need to put in a collision over here. This is, even if you don't want to make use of one, you have to put it as an argument over here, otherwise it doesn't work. So what we now want to check for is if col.compare tag is going to be is it a collision or no, it should be a collider, not a collision, otherwise it doesn't make sense. So if col.compare tag is in, and then in quotes we're going to put in trap or hazard or whatever you name it, then you can actually check for this. And for example, we can destroy the trap, and we can also report to the game manager that we have lost a life. So in this case, we basically do the same as we did here. We do create a public void, lose life or something like that. And what we can now do is, first off, of course, we need to have something like an int lives or lives or whatever. we maybe start at 3f, or it's not an f, but just a 3. So we're gonna lose a life whenever we hit one. So we say lives minus minus. So we deduct it by 1. And then we wanna check if we have more than enough lives, otherwise we are game over. So if lives is actually equal to 0, then we want to make sure that we, put something like debug.log, at least for the moment. Later on, you want to put like all the logic about the game game over. You're gonna put something like game over, you lose, whatever, and then you can also disable like all the logic about the player. So disable player logic. So, and we can basically also disable the player logic later on inside the player directly. So, like what we would go over is probably, disable the complete script, like the complete player script. In that case, you might want to bring the player script directly over here, so we can deactivate it also over there. For example, we gonna in lose life, we just put in the player script as an argument, player p, whatever. This is p is just how to access it, and here we can do something like p dot enabled is equal to false. So we just disable the script from the player over there, and then we can do all the other content. There are, once again, hundreds or thousands of possibilities to do this. So, and now when we are once again hitting a trap, we want to make use or lose life. So we say game manager dot instance dot lose life, and in open close parentheses we're going to put in the special keyword this. This in this case means it's this player class or this player script, basically. Don't forget to save. Oh, and by the way, what we want to do is we want to deactivate or delete or destroy whatever the actual obstacle we ran in. So col dot I believe it's game object dot setActive. You can just deactivate this to be false, so we don't have any collision events anymore getting handled, or just destroy this game object. So say destroy col.gameObject. Basically both works. So, and of course you're gonna save all that content, and let's see if we are able to hit any of these traps. And of course we want to make sure that we are triggering all of that. And what did we forgot? Yep, that's right, we forgot to implement, as I spoke or talked about before, the Rigidbody component. So once again, one of these need to have a rigidbody. You can make use of the newspaper guy to protect or to detect this, or you can make it also being all the cylinders, like all the traps can also have a rigidbody. Basically, it doesn't really matter. So we don't want to use a gravity except you want to make use of direct collision events, and these might be kinematic. Well, it basically doesn't matter, I guess. So now let's drive again into this one. Oh, I missed it. 2. And what we can do is we can pause anytime and check our game logic, and we can also always go to debug mode. It's like over here next to that. We should see that we only have 1 life left. As you can see, there's only 1 over there. So I disable that mode again. So I lost 2 lives. And what I wanna try now is to hit 3 of these obstacles, so I can basically trigger the game over functionality. So let's see if we can do this. Boom. So what you can see now is I got the debug line, hit game over, and my driver just stopped. Meaning now we can do something like game over, deliver this and that, you get this and this, or got this and that points or score or whatever it is. And yeah, then you basically go back to the final part. I guess I'm gonna finish that completely up by just putting some collision objects like here and there to keep our player inside the playfield, and then we are basically done with that complete let's say mini course, I would say. So I'm gonna bring maybe a cube over here. Make it a bit away from the buildings, at least for the moment. Once again, that can be automated later on by setting these ones up as prefabs or something like that. They don't necessarily have to be that huge. I make sure I bring this one like downwards, and I scale it one so that it's like covering the complete, like the complete playfield, the complete side over here. You can once again do this like over the complete playfield like this, depending on if you want to pre-create these scenes or you want to automate this like an unlimited runner. Both works. You want to make sure that you disable the mesh renderer component so you don't see those, but you are actually able to test away. I'm gonna create another tag over here called wall. So whenever I am hitting a wall, once again, I would use a ray cast into the left direction and to the right direction. If I hit any type of a wall, then I want to make sure that I, cannot go further. And we need to do this, or need to do this check. Meanwhile, we put, or do input over here. So I duplicate this box, or this wall, and hit W, and then I make sure that I have this like on the lower limit here as well, so we are unable to bypass this lower wall piece here as well. Now we just want to create this raycasts. So we're gonna go into script of our player over here, and we need to make some kind of a Boolean check with a raycast to the left or to the right direction. So we create something like a bool for a Boolean check. We can name it something like valid. We want to check if there's a valid turn. So this valid turn is basically whenever we shoot the ray into the left or the right direction, and we do not hit a actual wall, then we'll just return true, otherwise we return false. And in the movement later on, whenever we update it, then we can basically take this as a like a check. Meanwhile, we are going to do this in this update. There's one more flaw over there, is whenever we are already driving like to the left or to the right, we might not want to move forward. Well, when there's an angle, let me explain over here. For example, we are already driving like this, and the ray knows about it, then we just need to, or would need to, correct the angle of the actual player. So there are hundreds of possibilities to do that. For example, whenever we hit this, and we're gonna have to recorrect then the actual direction of that. So for example, when we hit this ray, we're gonna increment the angle, or like we do with the input, but we need to do this automatically, so we are not able to leave the playfield. So we're gonna do this raycast check right now. So we need basically two raycast checks, one to the left, one to the right. So first off, we need to have a ray, and of course the hit, like the raycast hit. So we're gonna create a new ray over here. Whenever we create a valid check, we want to make sure that we shoot this ray into the left direction of our current player. So this is going to be the direction we want to have here. So we create basically a new ray. Once again, we can actually take a look into, or we need to create two rays in total. So what we can set now is a origin as well as a direction. So the origin is going to be like where we start to where we start our ray cast check from. In this case, it's the transponder position of our player, and now I want to lift it up on the y-axis because my pivot point is on the bottom, and it would basically shoot under the wall if it is like straight on to the ground. In this case, we can do something like plus a new vector 3, and we can now you know, add to it onto the y-axis by 1, for example. You can also say plus the vector 3.up. Basically, it doesn't really matter. If you have a smaller playfield, then you can play around with this number so you see if that really works or not. Okay, so now we just need to have the direction. In this case, I would use the vector 3.left, so that's the world axis vector. Cool. So now we have that. We also want to do the same stuff for the right direction, like from the actual player, we lift this ray up. So maybe I rename this one to be ray left. This one is going to be ray right. So we shoot two rays, like in two directions, based on the world axis, and the actual, you know, start of the ray is basically where the transform position of our player is, plus a lifted up vector. Good. So now we just need to check if we hit something on ray left or on ray right. So if physics dot, I believe it's called raycast, and we need one more thing, by the way. We're gonna make use of that in a sec. So we're gonna shoot a raycast. Now we need to define several parameters. First off, we wanna check which ray. In this case, we're gonna check ray left first, maybe. Then we can do something like a maximum distance. I would put something like, if we have a distance of 1 meter, you can go higher or lower, depends on what you need and like. We can also put in a layer mask, and we can also later on put in even more interactions over there. So basically, we only need this. But what we also want to have is we want to check for a hit. So we need to say something like out. I'm gonna name it left hit, or just out hit. Let's see if just hit works. Hit represents a raycast hit, so we need to create this over here as well. So raycast hit, we just give it a name hit. So out hit is a special parameter once again over there. So that is actually necessary. So whenever we now shoot a ray left and in a direction, or in a like in the direction of that ray, like when our raycast hit does hit something in a amount of 1 meter away from our original point, then we want to return true. Otherwise, we want to return false. So in that case, we want to make sure that we check first for our keyword, like for our tag. So if hit.compare tag, in this case, we cannot compare the tag. We first need to talk to the collider we hit, and then we can do compare tag. If that tag is going to be a wall tag. Hey, thanks a lot for tuning in, Katie. Yeah, you're welcome. So, and what we now want to do is whenever we now hit that by comparing the tag to be a wall tag, then we want to return true, because we hit a wall, so basically it's not a valid hit. And we could also do this vice versa, so meaning whenever we return false, then we do not have a valid, so it depends on, you know, the direction you're going. After that check, so if that did not fire out and we do not stop at this point, like we return that, we also want to do the same check for the right point over there. So meaning we're gonna check for ray right. There's only one possibility, since we reduce or actually clamp the ray length to 1 meter or 1 unit in this case from our original position. So, and if the walls are like, let's say, more than 1 meter away from each other, or in this case 2 meters from each other, so we don't have like both rays touching the sides, then we are absolutely good to go. So only one of these will always trigger. So if we hit them, or like if we do not hit that and do not hit that, then we want to at the very end return false. There's one more thing we need to check is, of course, we need to take the ray right. Probably the out hit functionality does not work correctly, so maybe we need to create a second raycast hit over there. Let's see. Can be used inline. Yeah, we don't care about this. So don't forget to save, and let's see if we have any issues. I'm gonna rotate my biker back to be at 0 on the Y, so we do not start like, you know, with a rotation. We can also always check this. If we do hit anything, we can debug the ray by just showing it. So in that case, we can do something like debug dot, draw ray, and then we can just draw the ray left or the ray right. Let's do this just so you understand what I mean. So we say debug dot draw ray, and now we just pass in the start and the direction of the ray. So basically, we should be able to color this even further. So the draw ray start is basically transform dot position by the lifted up vector over here. So we get the complete correct position of that vector. So we see if we are not going under or anything over there. And then we need to have the direction. So in this case, it's vector 3 dot left. And maybe we want to tint this to be color dot red. Something like this. So whenever we now hit the left wall, we should see a a red drawn ray. But this is of course only happening if we are calling the valid boolean over here. So basically, whenever we are moving, like, it doesn't matter where we move and how we move and so on and so forth, even if we don't rotate and stuff like that, we want to make sure that we're gonna call this functionality at least. So we always want to do a val check over there. For example, when we go do any inputs, or let's assume we're gonna encapsulate like everything inside this boolean check. For example, I believe that works. I don't know. So if a position is actually not valid, well, let's see. No, if it is valid, we need to not confuse ourselves. I believe we're gonna return false over here and false over there as well, and return true over here. So a valid position returns true whenever nothing has been hit. Maybe that makes a bit more sense. So if valid, open close parentheses, since it's called like a function, and open close curly brace, we want to make sure that only if we have a valid turn that we can basically do any inputs over there. It basically doesn't make sense, I believe, because otherwise we will block the complete input possibilities for any key. So we could not, like, if we fire to the left and we are just hitting that one, we couldn't do any kind of an input anymore, which is bad, I would say. So maybe once again we need to find a way to, let's say, increase these angles. Like whenever a valid hit is onto the left side, then we do something like we increase the the angles by its rotation speed. So we basically go back onto the track. We'll test this in a sec. I just keep that as is for the moment. Maybe we're gonna see something whenever we move along. So I'm gonna try to pause here and see if we find any ray shooting from anywhere into any direction. Doesn't seem so. So we need to make sure that our walls, of course, are going to be tagged as wall. And now we try again and see if we find a red ray whenever we drive into the buildings. There we go. So what you can see now is it detects automatically now that we are, driving into this wall by this little ray over here. So what we could now do is we can see if that is the case, that we increase the Y rotation value. Nonetheless, if we do some inputs over there, we need to make sure that we are able to, go back on track. And meanwhile, that is the case, we probably also wanna block the maybe block the actual inputs over here. So what we could do is we could maybe outsource the ankles rotation over here and make use of that inside the boolean check. So we basically see if we do hit something on the left side, that we wanna go like positive on this ankle over here, and of course we wanna keep track on this. We can test this out, I guess, and see if that works. For example, we, instead of drawing that ray over there, nope, maybe we don't do this in here. Or do we? Let's try. I want to see if that automatically now increases the actual angle. Yep. Let's see if that works. So I try to, or I go and drive straight into the wall, and let's see if we automatically, have you seen that? I automatically bounce the wall by increasing the angle from that wall. So it automatically does that for me. I didn't do any input. And we can basically do the same now for the other side as well. Once again, we should be able, I'm gonna copy this over here. I believe I didn't stop my Unity one. So I decrease now the rotation speed when I hit a right wall. Want to make sure that I, negate the input. I don't forget to say. Oh, it is still driving somewhere. So I try to stop that. And I try to, I now go and steer to the left. Then we should see something like bouncing left and right. Hi Bollocks, thanks a lot for tuning in. A remake, I don't know if that has a huge potential. I just found the idea pretty nice. So what you can see now is my, my little guy here over there is automatically, I do not do anything, right? I just bounce between those two boxes, like these or invisible walls. Oh, something went pretty strange over here with that. I believe it's because of some strange behavior on the collisions. So as you can see, this bouncing off is automatically, now we are keeping, like we keep staying in between those two walls, because we are automatically changing the direction whenever we hit with a ray onto one or the other side. You can go even fancier with that. You probably want to go and block some this or that input. You can do something like with a Boolean check, or just to update a Boolean. So if a specific Boolean is true or false, then you might not do one or the other, input over there. So pretty good. I'm rather happy with that. So we just do this by, if this or that is a true. Basically what we could do, once again, we could maybe block the input for one or the other, as I said before, maybe with a Boolean. For example, I'm gonna do something, well, maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe we need to reduce the amount of yeah, Paper Mario said, yeah, nice idea. I have no idea how I would do this. Once again, I'm doing this completely freestyle over here. I just, get an idea, then I, try to talk about it and see how it goes. So once again, I started with like nothing over here, and then that's how this stream actually came together. So even Paper Mario, pretty interesting. Yeah, thanks a lot, Katie. I'm glad you like it. So, what else? What did I say? Oh yeah, about the booleans. So we can do something like bool block left, and we can also do something like bool block right. So not black, block right. What does it mean is we can now set these true or false depending if we have a hit or not. So we start with false because we don't have any, and we want to make sure that whenever we bypass those, we just need to make sure that we reset them like each or every now and then. And in this case, we do not just update these angles, but we can also say, okay, there is something we hit onto the left side, so we say block left is basically equal to true. So we have now a possibility to take the input and check also, meanwhile we try to input something, if block left is true or not. And we can do basically the same for the other side here as well. It doesn't matter the position over here because it's rather quickly done over here. So we put something like a block right true as well. Typos. It's called, it's again black. Why did I put black? I don't know. So we block right and block left, and if that is, if we come over here, like if there's no hit, or maybe we can put an else statement. I believe we need to put an else statement over here. So if that, whoops, if that does not return any in this physics check, or does it need to be here? So basically, let's try it here, because it became anyhow disabled, since it never touches that. I want to make sure that when we don't hit anything, we want to reset this one to be false. Hopefully that works. I don't know. Once again, I'm just trying out. So we're gonna block right here and true, and if there is no wall, we want to make sure that this is set to be false. Same for the other one, like over here, and so that. So else. So if we don't hit anything, we want to make sure that block left true, of course, is going to be set back to false. So we have the possibility once again to do a right or left input. So in that case, when we are now doing a left arrow input over here, and now we make use of an AND operator, and block left is basically false. So we don't block ourselves left because we don't hit any of the collision, only then we do this. The same we do for the right side, so if block right, and we negate this one. If not block right, then we want to do the rotation on the y-axis in the positive direction. Let the compiler run, don't forget to save, and see how that goes. Something is strange with the building, by the way. I believe it has... Oh yeah, it has something to do with the Rigidbody. As you can see, it flies around there in my building. Pretty interesting. So, let's test it out. So when I now go left, and I keep on hitting left, you can see I can still try... Oh, now I double blocked it. Okay, it doesn't release it on key press. I cannot do this anymore. Because it constantly hit it itself. So what I want to do is I want to debug that if they are true or not. And as you can see, block left and block right are completely activated like the whole time. So that's why I cannot do any more inputs. Maybe I overdid it. Maybe... What does that say? It's redundant into this check. Like this else check over there, probably, and I'm not quite sure. Oh yes, we need to put it outside over here. So whenever we bypass this one and we don't return false, of course we can say left block is false. So whenever we once again do a valid check over there, this else check needs to be outside. That's what I wasn't completely sure over here. So actually, if there's nothing happening over there, we want to reset it. Let's test it out again and see what's going on. So I'm gonna drive to the left. I keep hitting left now. As you can see now, I keep staying on the left side, meaning it's checking now the whole time if we are on the right. I'm gonna try the same on the right side. As you can see, pretty nicely. Hi Bollocks again. Well, these wheels are, well, there are not even wheels. As you can see, it's just, a single model over here. This wheel over there is not even a single object. Same for the front one. You can see it's just like a prefab. So wheel colliders are not really necessary for my setup over here. Because, well, you would have, if that's such a slim object, you would have to put some huge, rigid body around it, like a box or something, to hold the player on track. But, well, you can do this even without real wheels over there. But, all the programming for that is, well, kind of unnecessary. But it would be nice for ramps. But in that case, I would drive my driver with a rigid body, like, by giving it a force, like a constant velocity force or something. So it does make more sense. Or in this case, even better, using the motor of a wheel collider itself, as I did in the Tank Tracks, in the Tank Tracks live stream, I believe. I don't know when it was, like some days ago. Well, it's rather in the later part. You're gonna see how that works in the end. So no, I will not cover this rear collider in this little tutorial. So, as you can see, I'm able to get a score right now when I throw a newspaper like inside over here. I should be able to do something with a doormat as in the as in the past. So whenever our newspaper we throw is landing directly on the doormat, we're gonna give some other score. And if it just hits the house but nothing else, we could also go with a score like we basically do over here with this Rigidbody or this actual component over here, like the collider. Anyhow, here this one. Do I have a locked one? This one here does not need to have a rigid body. I'm gonna remove this component. It doesn't make sense. I go back to normal mode and deactivate the convex one. I believe that was the last one I forgot to put. No, this one has a rigid body as well, so I remove it as well. And make this one back. This one never had any. It's good. And the actual mailbox just does have the box collider with a trigger component. So pretty nice. And once again, if you want to, you can put like a doormat, part over there. So, and we also, what we need to do is we need to clamp the actual input. So we have only a specific amount of, newspapers available. So we don't throw them away like, hot potatoes. So what I would do is for the doormat, as simple as that, I just create a cube and make it as huge and as small as I want to or need to. And for that doormat, I can literally, I just make it as small or as big as I want to, depending on how hard I want this to, be. And maybe bring this over here. Maybe I'm gonna take this little object and, make it a bit more over there. So we have the doormat being this one. Maybe I reduce this or increase the size a bit to the left, something like that. So we get another amount of points over there. Basically, what we could do is we could make use of the mailbox, like the mailbox script. But what we need to do for that is we would need to make sure that the mailbox script score is basically a public value, so we can change it. So because we do the same, we don't necessarily have to, create a new script for that. We just make this one a public value for the mailbox, public int score, or whatever, score with a small letter, and we can set this one to be something as a base to be 1000, and we can in here just pass in the score we just set beforehand. So why do we do this? Because we can now put this onto not just on the mailbox, but we can also put this like on the doormat once again. And this one here is basically going to, like everything's going to stay the same, but you don't have to necessarily create more and more scripts by just, doing the same stuff. Hey Jenny, thanks a lot for tuning in, or Yanni, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, greetings from Germany over here. So what we want to do is, of course, it's about the same. There's one flaw, is going to be the newspaper.active thing over there, because our doormat does not have, any of these, newspapers inside. So what we want to do is we want to do an extra check over here so we don't get any null reference exceptions. So what we do is if newspaper dot or in this case, if newspaper is not equal to null, so if there is at least a newspaper set, only then we want to, activate this. So if there is no newspaper or nothing to activate in this case, it can also be any other object, by the way. If that is the case, if that is not null, then we don't do anything to this. Otherwise, we're going to do this. So we just make sure nothing fancy is going to work within the, within the check over there. Two-wheeled vehicle setup. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Bollocks. So if you are able to explain a bit further. So what I want to do is I want to drag the mailbox piece over here onto my, doormat. I can also rename this door mat. I'm not quite sure if that has a double T or one T. Basically, doesn't matter. We want to give something like 300 score, and we don't want to set anything inside the newspaper slot, since we don't want to activate any object. What you can do is you can also tint this by anything if you want to, this object, but only if that makes sense. In the player, we want to make sure that we are making use of our, our current amount of of newspaper, meaning whenever we now shoot one, we want to decrement current amount. I don't have a bike setup for a wheel collider. Well, yet. Maybe I'm gonna create one sooner or later. So, but shouldn't be different to a usual car. You just have like a one motor part. You need to make it quite heavy so it's not, flying around and flipping around. Same for the wheel colliders, but the setup for cars are going to be basically the same. You just need to create a rather broad rigid body component which is holding that it is not like, a nip going to the left or to the right. So it always stays on the tires. Probably you need to cheat a bit by using front like two wheels or the backside. But literally, it doesn't matter, I guess. So whenever we shoot, where do we shoot? So whenever we shoot over here, if we have enough, this is like that. We want to spawn some. We're gonna add, the torque and all the other content. I'm not quite sure if the torque even worked. Well, what we want to do is we want to decrement from the current amount of our newspapers we got. If you don't like to have this directly inside the biker, you can also put this into the game manager, and the game manager takes care of that. Also, later on when we, maybe it's even easier to put this into the game manager as a logic piece, because the game manager is accessible from any, from any point in the game. By the way, I get rid of the update loop in the game manager, and let's do this over here. Meaning our newspaper amount, I'm gonna drag this or put this onto that over there. So public void, I name this maybe set newspaper, because we can add to it or we can also decrease from it. And we're gonna bring like everything from the player over here into this. Also, we need to put in some arguments, because whenever you want to have some logic to pick up some newspaper which are lying around, you wanna take care of that over here. So we're gonna keep on spawning the stuff over there, but the amount over here, like the maximum amount and the current amount, these are the ones you wanna take away from here and probably put them into the game manager over here, so the game manager can keep track of how much he actually got. And so we can set newspaper and we can request newspaper. Like the newspaper amount. We're gonna do all of that in a sec. So in here, we want to first read from the game manager if we have enough. So public, and in this case it's an integer since we just return the amount. So something like request papers. I don't know, something like that. We just want to return the actual amount. So in this case, we can simply say something like return the current amount over here, and that's it. And the comparison is going to be still happening in the player, so we can do something like game manager dot instance dot request papers. So if of course we need to tease that as a function, since it returns something, it's an integer function, and we compare it. If it is bigger than 0, then we can do our spawn logic over there. And what we want to do is, whenever we now shoot one, we're gonna talk or update the game manager to this as well. So game manager dot instance dot, and now we want to set newspaper to be -1. So we want to negate it from there. Currently we don't have any argument inside, so we need to pass that one in this case int, let's say amount. And in here we want to do something like the current amount plus equal whatever amount is. And as you can see, if you pass in, if you have checked out mathematics, if you add a negative number, it will be still negated. pretty good. So we can only, of course, set this one when we have like enough over there. And vice versa, when we later on have a pickup, we can say with that pickup, okay, we're gonna set the newspaper to plus equal whatever the amount is, plus equal 5. And we can also say if it is, higher than 10, we want to keep it as 10 or higher than the maximum amount. So if current amount is bigger or equal the maximum amount, then we want to make sure that the current amount is equal to the maximum amount. So we don't overdo it over here. We can pick up like hundreds of newspapers, but we will never have more than 10. So just with that check. And if we are lower with that, that basically does not really fire over here. We don't care. Now we can also test this one out. So we should be able to fire only 10. We can also count them downwards, whatever. And we can also debug them. We can see them inside our, where is it? Our game logic over here. So we can once again go to debug mode and see, okay, now we are starting with current amount of 10. And let's throw some and see what's going on. I'm gonna throw 1, but it's not getting deducted. Okay, something is wrong. I believe I didn't save it. There we go. Control S for quick save, game manager as well, and try again. So, and now you can see I deduct them by 10, and now I have 0. And there we go. Yeah, you can do that. I will not implement this, like holding this one for the fire amount, but you can basically have like a power, or as you explain, like you charge the power up to a different something, and then you multiply the power by the actual throw mechanism, by the actual force. I'm gonna show you in a second what I mean by that. So as you can see right now, everything is set it up completely, so meaning we can only put 10 and throw them and deduct them from the game manager. And the last one you might want to do is you want to do something like a pickup, where you can literally get some newspapers. To do so, I would create an empty, I guess. Maybe not. Oh yeah, that is actually always a good idea to improve old mechanics, because the old the old Paperboy was, well, kinda strange, kinda messed up, I would say. Let's do some pickup. So we are almost done over here with the complete stuff. So meaning I could create a cube. And this is, I just take the actual box collider from that, and you can always go in and do some more cubes, S cubes, and I disable like the mesh collider on this, or mesh renderer, and go to normal mode, otherwise I get distracted too much. Now I can, reduce that, and as you can see, it's now like we can, be super fancy with the graphics over here. I would do maybe something like put like pizza pieces or whatever. I just duplicate the cube, and so we have something to showcase, or I have something to showcase. I don't see much, but maybe we can do something like a newspaper stack up over here, so we know what's going on. Again, that maybe looks like pizzas, but doesn't matter at all, I guess. Yeah, that's a good one, Yanni. I believe so. But of course, you need to improve. I mean, the complete mechanics. Like, what went wrong in the past, like what you don't want to see anymore in this. And whenever you go and do some kind of a remix, you want to make sure that they also look good. I mean, and feel good. I mean, most of the time, it's more important to have them feel good, like especially when you are in the phase of prototyping. First, you want to make sure that that it actually really does feel good, and then you can go fancy with design and stuff like that. But yeah, kind of. And of course you can make use of all projects and, you know, take old scripts and stuff like that you have probably written already or not, and make use of them anytime. Newspaper pickup. If you want to make you know, make reuse or automate things, you always want to create a prefab again, and you bring that over here. It's all about iteration. Yeah, of course. Prototyping is also about iteration. So, you know, you're gonna create the first block, the first goal. Then you do something like a review. That's what I did, like the last 2.5 or 2 hours and 45 minutes about it. You know, I checked out what is the goal, what we need. Then we go, you know, forward into the next phase. Like, does it feel good? What does work? What doesn't work? So you can super fast and super simply see if the idea, like the overall idea, completely works over here. So yes, you're absolutely right. It's all about iteration, like especially in a prototyping stage. So I have this newspaper pickup, and I need to have a script over here, which is actually handling all the pickups. So I'm gonna name it pickup, like so. And once the compiler is done running, we're gonna open this also up. And this is super simple. We just check if we are getting hit by something, like the player in this case, and then we destroy ourselves. We can, by the way, also do this directly in player, I guess. Maybe that's even a good, not a bad idea, I guess. So the player can basically check for everything. Let's take a look. We have an on-collision event anywhere. There we go. So basically we can do compare for this trap, and we can update the game manager by whatever the score amount is. The downside on doing this inside the player is that we cannot set a specific amount, like a random amount or something, to get back. Well, we can do randomize that, like between 3 and 6 or something, but maybe we want to make one package more worse than another. Then you want to put like everything inside one single script, make a public variable about it. If you want to just keep on, you know, everything inside the player, it doesn't really matter, I guess. We can do something like if cul.compare, what is it? Yeah, compare tag, and I'm gonna create a pickup tag in a sec. So pick up with a big P and big U. I just need to make sure I remember that. Then I can do something like game manager dot instance dot, and now we can set the newspaper, and we can now randomize the input over here. Like we can say do something like random dot range, and we put a number between, let's say, 3 and, I don't know, 6. So whenever you are using random.range, make sure that this number over here is always high enough. What does it mean is the 6 always gets, or the second number always gets deducted when it is an integer by 1. So you will have always a number between 3 and 5 in this case. If you want to be a bit fancy or a bit more fancy, you can also do this between 3 and 7. So the maximum amount is going to be 6. Completely up to you. And of course, what you want to do is you want to deactivate the collision object, or as I said before, you can also destroy it. So completely up to you. And now the final step would be just use the pickup over here and tag it with pickup. So I create a new tag for this one. I'm gonna call this pickup, and of course hit enter to apply. And of course we want to make sure that we will tag the actual prefab pickup and go down or go outside over here as well. So this one should be like pickup, and when we go into our prefabs folder, we want to make sure that this one here has the pickup over there as well. Okay, and now we should be able to, you know, hit this one and increase our amount and disable the actual prefab over here. So I bring this maybe here, so I have some time to throw away all my newspapers. Maybe I make sure I don't hit any traps, so I don't lose life or even more. I'm gonna hit my destroy all my newspapers. And now I want to make sure that I pick this one up, but nothing happens. That's awesome. Why doesn't it happen? Because it's not of type trigger. So we need to make sure this newspaper stack is going to be trigger. I apply that change and try again. So we're driving around over here. I'm gonna give some boost, some speed. That's funny. Why doesn't that trigger? That's interesting. What did I forgot? I forgot the Rigidbody component because our driver does not have any, I guess. So we want to make this one kinematic, I guess, and test again. Once again, if you have like multiple objects to play around with, I could pick this up, and I got another 3 over here. I'm gonna test again. So I shoot away all my 10, so whenever I keep on pushing, I cannot do any. But if I pick this, I can throw another, how much? 6. Nice. So now we also have working pickups, so we can like once again do some continuous, you know, driving around, picking up even more, and so on and so forth. Okay, so literally the actual idea and the actual you know, the actual work, the actual prototype is basically done. So we have like everything we wanted, or most of the stuff we wanted. We have the possibility to hit the mailboxes, and we activate like newspapers and get score for that. We should be able to get score even from that. Jump and ramp. Yeah, that's a good one. But since I don't use Rigidbody again, that might be not a good idea at this point. Because that means we're gonna have to use the Rigidbodies, I guess. Because of, you know, gravity and drop down and stuff like that. Otherwise I would have to work that out with one of these, you know, ray casts. Meaning I would have to shoot down ray and reduce the y value. Well, is it the y value? No, it's the z value. Let's see. Yeah, it's the y value. We would need to, you know, reduce the y value downwards until we hit the ground. Like, we need to check out if we are grounded or not, and then we are only able to do further, you know, rotation and movement and stuff like that. Otherwise, it wouldn't work completely correct. And yeah, same for the ramp. We can, or we should, or we would have to put another ray cast. If we don't use Rigidbody and gravity, we would need to go further in that case, and meaning we would have to, you know, test out what is the normal direction of the actual, of the game object. Let me explain. Let's assume this is going to be our ramp, wherever it is. Maybe I don't have anything installed over here, so I just showcase that a bit. So any polygon, yeah, that's right. That's what you would do. Yeah, that's right. That's what you would do when you were using a Rigidbody. But once again, if you would have to, or when you do this with a Rigidbody, you need to move him differently, as I did. Currently, I just, you know, push him, or just change its direction. I'm not using any forces or stuff. When you would not go with Rigidbodies, then you would have to shoot a ray downwards, probably, yeah, kind of close to the front wheel. And maybe also kind of close, no, just to the front wheel, I guess. So, and you need to shoot this one like maybe straight down, and you need to see the normal direction of this upwards looking, you know, polygon. The normal is like in the 90 degrees away, like it would be somewhere in this direction. And this normal needs to be, you know, brought back to the rotation of our actual player by using the raycast check. So the raycast shoots down, see what is the normal of this particular ramp, and then go, and then you should be able to rotate this into the correct direction. So meaning, well, where's the biker? Like when you have them here, you're gonna see that the normal direction once again of this polygon is going to be this one. So you would need to, rotate the biker into the normal direction of the ramp itself. So this is actually the only way I guess is possible to make this without a rigid body. So, but if you would go using the wheel colliders, as you spoke of before, then you would be able to do this as well, because the wheel collider also make use of rigid body, of course, and they would basically, drive around over here. The rigid body or the wheel collider setting is basically not so hard. But once again, moving is kind of strange. Well, in that particular case, I believe we need to take care of that, that we're not falling left and right to keep balance. I'm not quite sure if only two wheel colliders are even able to do something, but you might need to trick around a bit by, extending those wheel colliders, not taking two in consideration, but maybe four. So you have the possibility to stay on four wheels, but you don't see the wheel colliders in this case. And you could connect to one of these wheel colliders, like front or backside or wherever. You could basically put the content together. Maybe for the last couple of minutes I want to invest over here. We can take a look into wheel collider setups, but not into coding, because I already discovered this into the tank tutorial. So basically I can do a copy over here. I'm gonna disable this biker just for the sake of testing, and maybe I'm gonna take this one a bit to the side. Oh, that's funny. Why does that option not work? Oh, it's because the camera doesn't really care about it. So I disable this one just for the sake of testing. Once again, I do not do anything else, but I don't push the guy like forward and so on. So I disable the player script for the moment. Yes, you reduce Y whenever he is not grounded anymore. So you make use of the raycast check first to change the angle, and when you are like here, or like here, or maybe, well, you need to maybe have two raycasts going down, maybe front wheel and back wheel. When both of them do not fire anything, then you know that you are not grounded at this point and on this point. So whenever they both not rounded, then you know that you are actually in the air. And meanwhile that you wanna put the normal direction. Like you want to rotate him so once again so back that he is like going to be able to land on both wheels after this. Or you wanna keep whatever the ramp gave you before, reduce then like this, and the second wheel, when that is not grounded, then you probably want to rotate again this object so it gets rounded, like straight, that both tires or both wheels are going to touch the ground once again. I believe there are a couple of things you can do with using just a raycast instead of using wheel colliders. Anyways, for wheel colliders, you just literally put empty game objects, like where our tires or your tires are going to be. Maybe one is going to be here. I'm gonna duplicate this and bring this over there. Once again, basically, I guess it doesn't really matter. And those two, you just put these wheel colliders on them. But you need to have a extra rigid body which is going to take care of the complete setting, I guess. Once again, I don't think that this makes sense, like a total sense of it. Maybe I'm gonna put this like a 200, and this biker itself needs to have a rigid body again, like a box. So 3D object, maybe cube. Gonna make this, maybe I keep this over here, and I take these two wheel colliders or wheel objects and bring them over here to the side. Funny thing is I cannot see them. I wonder why that is the case. Maybe the radius of the wheel collider is too small. That's funny. Where's the wheel collider? It should be here on my game object, but I don't see anything. That's funny. I mean, real funny. Yeah, that's what I did. I mean, it's the wheel collider is already over here. Yeah, you know, the stress with all these wheel colliders is so horrible, kind of. Maybe they are just too much sticking anywhere, but I don't see anything. And I added these components already, and sometimes Unity, sucks. Maybe I can do something like I'm gonna save first and do something like a refresh. Probably it helps, probably not. In this case, it's not. Okay, I guess we don't get this to work. I don't even know how huge my model is going to be. Maybe I'm gonna try again just with an empty one outside. Gonna bring this over here and try to put another wheel collider. Funny, huh? I cannot see them. Why is that so? No idea. That's really strange. Usually there should be anywhere. So maybe I'm gonna put a one over here. Maybe my project is anyhow, strange. What I would do is with these two, or with this wheel collider, I would duplicate them and bring them onto the other side. Maybe I press play and we see if something is actually happening over here. And this cube over here, that needs to have a rigidbody component, because that is like the weight, like the mass object over there. We'll see maybe some fancy hopping around over here. Maybe I'm gonna put something like 1,000, not 100. And we're gonna take a look once again. Yeah, maybe I need to restart Unity, I don't know. So what you can see is now it is sinking downwards. Wheel colliders require a rigid body to function. Do we need to have rigid bodies here? Okay, then. There you go. We can see them. Woohoo! So as you can see, we need to have rigid bodies to make them function. So, gonna bring them a bit down, make it a bit smaller maybe. A bit too huge for my actual tires, I guess. Oh, that's a bit too small. Well, drag them down a bit, see if that looks good. Seems so. So we want to make use of gravity, but yeah, let's see. So my wheels are falling down, as you can see. Like they're falling through the ground. Why is that so? And they are dragging, like the cube, they are dragging this one downwards. That's pretty strange. I believe I had this this mess before as well. Maybe they are too heavy. I don't think so. Nope, they are still falling downwards. Where do they need to be connected? That's the question. Where do they do not need to be connected onto the cube, right? Nope. They are falling super fast now. So maybe they need to be like on the actual object. I don't know. It's quite some strange behavior, as always. Yeah, that's funny about the rigid bodies not showing it, not even giving me any idea, except I press play and encounter issues. Yeah, those wheel colliders are kind of strange anyways, so... But... What did I miss? What did I miss? Maybe this object, maybe not the cube, but maybe the biker. who did needed the actual rigid body? Let me just get rid of the cube, just for the sake of testing, and make those wheel colliders again part of the biker, just so I get the idea what's happening, or hopefully. That's so funny, it still falls down. Oh well. What do we need? Why do they not stay on ground? Use gravity. They do not need to be kinematic, doesn't make sense. The mass should be, well, at least one mass. Same here. Radius. The other stuff is kinda uninteresting. So, what's the problem here? So this box here basically is my actual pivot of the object. Okay, let's assume. I wonder why this actually has to have a rigid body. Maybe to get the collision right. Do we need to have a rigid body on? Can't add a rigid body to D. Oh, I didn't want it to have a 2D one. What if I put this over here? What's happening? Okay, that's awesome. The complete thing is now falling downwards. So maybe this one here does. You might know. Yeah, of course. Feel free to tell me. Yesterday or whenever I did the other stream, it took me quite some time to get this work correct on the tank threads, but sooner or later I got the idea about it. So this one needs to be kinematic, maybe. I don't know. So feel free to give me your ideas over here. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought about it first. So as you can see, I have the rigid body over here on my main object. Maybe the box collider does get in the way, but I don't think so. And it has like a mass of 1000, and my little objects here, they do have a mass of 1. And even the mass of the wheel collider have a lower value. So there you go. I wonder why this rigid body here is necessary. I guess it is not necessary. And maybe it's using... There we go! Okay, so the box collider... no, the rigid body is not necessary onto the wheel collider. God damn it. Always such strange behaviors. So, as you have seen, this one got shot away. So I get rid of the mesh collider. Nope. What did I add over here onto this one? That's a bit strange. I don't want to have this one as a convex one. And let's try again. Booyah! That was a nice one. So he's now hopping a bit strangely around over here. So it's now about fine-tuning the mass between the biker and the wheels. So the higher the, I believe the higher the wheel colliders, things are, and also there are like these, dampers or the suspensions over here. They can be reduced to be a rather low number, I guess. So let's try suspension distance 0.1 or something, so it's not, jumping too much. It's still kind of wonky. And maybe I'm gonna try to increase the mass of the body part. And if that doesn't make sense or doesn't work, then we probably do not make use of this biker with the rigid body, but maybe a sub-object of that. So I'm gonna remove that and try once again to add a 3D object cube as a child and give that the rigid body component. That might work. I don't know about the weight. We want to make use of gravity, and we want to make sure that this is like above, let's say quite above the wheels, and test again. Okay, so this is not recognized by the wheel colliders, since this cube now is not like, the mother object or the father object of the actual wheel colliders. So the wheel colliders probably need to be, part of the box, and the box needs to be, part, or at least the cube needs to be higher in case of hierarchy. Let's test it out. I'm gonna make them part of the box. Once again, my box is going to be the pivot point of the object. Nope. So yes, we cannot put this on a cube over here. We can put the wheel colliders basically just being anywhere, but the biker over there needs to have a, let's say, rather goodly set it up rigid body over there. So once again, I'm gonna put maybe something like a 500 over here to get away from this springing. That is the real issue, is that it's like about, and yep, falling downwards. It's about, I guess, oh, now I have 1,500. Maybe I just test with 100. So that is the actual fine-tuning content. That's what takes quite some time to figure what number is going to be the correct number over here with that frickin' rigid bodies and frickin', wheel colliders. It's a collision thing, yep, of course it is. It's maybe I can lift this guy up a bit, and maybe I'm gonna make this collision box over here. Maybe that can be an issue. Maybe I make this. No, that is bad. Because that doesn't make sense. I would just want to have this. Maybe I make it so that this is not touching the ground, because that's nothing necessary anyways. Maybe I make super heavy tires. Well, what the tires do is whenever they are super heavy, they are falling faster than the object. So they are the first one on the ground. And then slightly after that, the rigid body of the actual cube from the player itself, like, comes slower afterwards. Once again, all of that doesn't really make sense over here. So maybe it also has something to do with the actual maybe the damping rate is a bit wrong, but I don't think so. Well, yeah, that is the trouble with wheel colliders. So sometimes they work, it seems, sometimes they don't. Nobody really knows what's going on over here. If there's no suspension distance, they fall through. What the hell is that? Let me put them over here onto our ramp. Like, I'm gonna take for a test. I make this a bit broader, and maybe the plane is the issue. No idea if that is true, but I'm gonna let him drop over here and see what's going on. Nope, it's not about that. Maybe it's too heavy. Maybe we're gonna put like 100 and a 50. I don't know. Nope. Well, never mind. I guess I cannot, just solve that problem here right now. I don't know. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Then you have like all these strange behaviors. Again, I would not go with wheel colliders and do it like this, I believe, because it doesn't make sense, So even with a wheel damping rate of 0, that thing just falls through. And I'm not quite sure if that has to do with the size of the model or not. Maybe I forgot something or not. But you can see the collision detection over here is like there's none. See, there, that is not even a trigger or anything. So in the end, you're probably better, to get rid of that as much as possible. And if not, if you don't necessarily have to create a bike. I just wonder why that is the case and what the problem is. Okay, so the suspension basically takes care of making this one jump. So what if there is no wheel damping? Bounces around. And if we put something like 0.5, is it harder? I don't know. I don't see any difference over here. Not really. So, well, I believe it's about the weight. The target position is 0.5. That should be correct. The radius is, of course, based on the size of the wheels. But why in the world is that thing not doing what it should do? Let me take a look in some settings and maybe we get a simple idea. I didn't want to touch this in that series. As you can see, it's just time consuming and it's just, yeah, not really part of the series over here. Let's see. If I find a quick solution on my own, well, I could once again, go in my yesterday thing and take a look into this. Because I don't want to go into the coding of that. I mean, usually it should just work as should. It's based on the actual settings over there, and maybe the size is too huge or too small. Maybe rigid bodies do not do what they should do, and so on and so forth. And that just doesn't make sense. I mean, and there are not even any objects to take a look into. It's just the actual settings are quite strange. Let's see if I find something I can make use of. Directly in Unity, maybe. Well, they don't really have anything useful. Like they just show the actual properties, but maybe we can make use of the damper, but I don't think so. Super high damping, maybe that makes sense. No, maybe we need to reduce the damper to 1000. Not too bad actually. Maybe we don't do any damping. 100. Okay, so with a super low damping, the guy is rolling down the ramp. Interesting. So even so, let's see what's happening when he does that. The wheel colliders are going to connect over here, as you can As you can see, the wheel colliders are over here, but the biker model is still going to be inside, so probably it's because I'm unprecise in the colliders. And what you can do is you can always go to isometric X view, and that's where you're gonna see where the differences are going to be. So you can literally go and move this one like where your tires would be, and maybe also increase the radius. It's just a slight bit over here, and maybe I take the which ones are they? Number 1 and number 3, and bring them a bit more over here and test again. He just fell down strangely. So maybe I'm gonna increase the weight a bit of the rigid body of the driver, so it's a bit heavier maybe. Kind of strangely happening stuff here, just because I changed the rotate or the size of the radius. That's strange. So maybe I'm gonna move them a bit downwards, see what's going on. So anyhow, he is rolling. Maybe I reduce the damper even more to 50. Maybe it's also the spring. Maybe the spring is too high. We can reduce the spring maybe to 3,500 instead of 35,000. I don't know. Maybe we need to make it higher or lower. Well, that's kind of nice. But as you can see now, he is like, driven by that. So what you need to do is now you need to increase the motor power of that, like permanently give him motor power, and so you should be able to push him or move him up or downwards. Like when I would now take the biker, when I press play, and dragging him over. I try to at least. He might be too sloppy, and I try to bring him anywhere. Doesn't really doesn't really work. But when you do something like that, you should do all the collision stuff over there, so you should be able to go and drive around over here. Once again, I do not do anything. I don't even do any strange stuff. And also he doesn't really take care now of the complete stuff we have created before, and like the rays are not casted correctly, and they don't even drive him more to the left or to the right. That's why I would avoid in any case using rigid bodies, I guess. Anyway, anyhow, if you want to go deeper into wheel colliders, you are absolutely free to do so. I believe I'm done with the stream. I thank you guys for tuning in over here, and I hope you still learned something over there. Once again, you can take this idea and bring it even further. Once again, you have seen a lot of stuff about of collisions and stuff like that. The wheel colliders, once again, they don't really make sense for such a game because you are way clearer in using other things, but you can still go and try to optimize that to your needs. If you want to learn even more and so on and so forth, just take a look into the description. There are a lot of courses I currently teach on, like on different games. And yeah, if you want to grab your free PDF for 3 strategies to finish your game, then feel free to check out my website. And yeah, I'm glad you liked the stream, and I hope to see you probably in one or the other streams later on. So once again, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this one, and once again, if you need help for your game in any specific cases, whatever, and you want me to take a look into, you can hire me always over on my website, OctoManGames.com. You can once again check out everything into the description below. And yeah, have a good night or good day or whatever your time zone is currently. Thanks a lot, and yeah, take care. Don't forget to subscribe, by the way, or even, give me a thumbs up if you like the stream. Bye-bye.